Well, welcome everyone to today's AI Initiatives Workshop. This is Brian from Strategic Treasurer, and we're pleased you could join us as we discuss how to better evaluate, plan, and execute AI initiatives. Our panelists for today are Thomas Gavaghan, Head of Product Strategy at Kyriba, Felix Grevy, Senior Vice President Platform, Data and AI at Kyriba, and Mark Brousseau, Strategic Director at CMLI. And our MC for today is Craig Jeffery, Founder and Managing Partner of Strategic Treasurer. Welcome, Tom, Felix, Mark, and Craig. And I'll now turn the workshop over to you.
Thank you so much, Brian, and Mark, Felix, and Tom. It's good to be presenting with you on this extended version of a workshop.
Craig, thanks for extending the invite to us. We're excited and really impressed, honestly, with the turnout, and excited for a few hours here of kind of digging into really, I think, a lot of topics that people want to talk about today.
Right. Excellent. Thank you. So let me join in the welcome. First, thank you for joining our first online workshop. You are pioneers. And Sub said this couldn't be done. Who's going to show up for a 3-hour workshop online? And you're proving everyone right that this model can work. So we look forward to your feedback after the workshop as well for ways that we might improve it. First, I'll give a shout out to our lead sponsor of the workshop, Kyriba. Everyone knows Kyriba, or hopefully knows Kyriba as a top treasury management system provider or liquidity management provider that you probably know to some extent or perhaps use. And we're delighted to have them provide content and dialogue. And you'll enjoy hearing from them throughout our time together. I'm glad to have Mark and Tom as instructors and panelists today. And also thanks to CMLI, the Cash Management Leadership Institute, for being the other sponsor on this workshop and working together with us. And I'm glad, again, to share a platform with Mark and CMLI. Thanks, Mark. So let me frame our time today. We have 3 major sections and 2 short breaks. So there'll be content, 2 short breaks. These will be ideally positioned for refreshing your coffee or attending to other needs that you may have. There's an encouragement. I would encourage you to remain focused throughout the webinar. Multitasking is a myth. You're switching between one function and another. We encourage you to block this full time for sharing, learning, and enjoying new format and the content. A workshop means this isn't a webinar, but it's coming to the same type of channel. So what can you expect? So today we're going to cover foundational content, which will be very webinar-like. We'll also move to both perspectives and practical sections where we will show and discuss the content we're covering and give examples from that. And this will be made up of demonstrations, even friendly debating, dialogue, and finally, panel discussions are part of this workshop. And these will be mostly in the last section where we'll cover future possibilities, staff developments. And so you'll see some tools and examples that we'll share. They'll be actually using Kyriba to exhibit some of the content that we have. I've asked them to do that, so it's a real world example that we have those. But after the webinar, you'll have work to do. There'll be some work to do during the workshop, and after there'll be some work to do. We're glad you're here. And Mark will start us off on foundations once I just roll through this discussion of what we're covering. So we'll begin with AI foundations and TMS use cases. That'll be the first chunk of time, a little bit more than an hour. Then we'll have a break, and we'll move on to developing and prioritizing the artificial intelligence list. This is where we'll talk through how you build the list. We'll give you some examples, and this is where you're going to have some homework. Then we'll spend time, Tom and Felix and I will spend some time on the treasury perspective and case studies. We'll look at different ways you can use AI. We'll move on from there to the AI playbook or a game plan, how to create your game plan, what are the steps you need to use. And then we'll have another break, and then the future possibilities. And there'll be 2 discussions on future possibilities as well as staff development. We'll have 2 moderated sessions with some speed rounds in there as well. So with that, that's our agenda. And I'll turn it over to Mark to start us off on AI Foundation. So I will drop the screen, bring it up, and You can begin when you see the screen or as you like. I'll have that up in just a moment.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having us here, Craig. The Cash Management Leadership Institute works with treasury and finance professionals, and I probably don't have to tell any of my fellow panelists that AI is the single hottest topic in treasury and finance today. And quite frankly, I can't remember, Craig, a topic that has both excited and terrorized treasurers quite as much as AI. And I think during the course of today's workshop, we're going to dispel some of those myths and misperceptions that might be causing you agita and provide you with some of the tools and best practices to help get you even more excited about deploying the technology successfully in your organization. Next slide, please. So where we're going to start is really at the beginning. We thought it was important to ground ourselves in what it is we mean when we talk about artificial intelligence. Now, I know that this term AI gets thrown around constantly, but what it really describes is a hierarchy, if you will, of technologies, and each one building on the one below it. And at the top of this tree, if you will, is artificial intelligence itself. And quite frankly, at its core, it's any system that's designed to perform tasks that normally would require human intelligence. This is what makes it different than, say, robotic process automation, right? AI can recognize patterns, it can reason, it can make some decisions, it can even generate responses. Underneath AI sits machine learning. That's a subset of AI that enables computers to learn from data rather than having to wait for somebody to provide it with fixed instructions. So instead of being programmed line by line, machine learning systems can detect patterns and improve automatically as they process or expose to more data and decisions. And for treasury professionals, that means that algorithms can analyze things like historical cash flows or spot anomalies or even forecast trends, all without being explicitly told to do it. Now, inside machine learning lies what they call deep learning. This uses layers of artificial neural networks. And if you've heard of neural networks, they're loosely based on how our human brain works. And the idea is that they can process massive amounts of complex data. Deep learning powers everything from, say, image and speech recognition to natural language processing. More on that in a few minutes. And at the leading edge of all of this is deep learning. And that's where we find generative AI, the branch of AI that creates new content. Generative AI, or Gen AI, as the cool kids like to say, these models don't just analyze data, they produce it. So that could mean drafting, say, a policy language or summarizing your financial reports, or maybe even generating predictive narratives about your liquidity. So when we say AI in Treasury, it's useful to imagine it as concentric circles, right? AI is the broadest concept, then machine learning, deep learning, and finally generative AI at the center. And that's part of how we're redefining how we interact with our data today. So now that we've seen the branches of the so-called AI family tree, the next question is, all right, so how do these systems actually learn? Next slide, please. So every AI model has to learn somehow. And the method it uses to determine what it can do, right? So in general, there's three main learning styles for AI. And I'm being very broad here. There's supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. Let's start with supervised learning. This is the most common approach. And it's like teaching with an answer key. We feed the model examples of inputs along with the correct outputs. We give it the answers, say past transactions that were fraudulent or say legitimate. And what the system does is it studies these examples until it can predict the correct label for new data all on its own. And for Treasury, that's how models forecast things like payment timing or detect, say, anomalies that could indicate fraud or compliance violations. Now, unsupervised learning works differently. Here, the data doesn't come with labels. There's no answer key. The model looks for hidden patterns or clusters in the data itself. You hear a lot of technology providers talking about, pouring through your data. This is what they're talking about. Treasury teams can use this for tasks like, say, grouping similar payment behaviors or identifying seasonal cash flow trends or segmenting customers based on activity. A lot of payment vendors are using it for that purpose today. It's really boils down to discovery rather than prediction, right? Let's look through our data to find those patterns and be able to drive some behavior based on it. Then there's reinforcement learning, and this is all about feedback. The system takes actions, gets rewarded or penalized. That was right, that was wrong, and it learns by trial or error, much like we do, humans, right? Um, think of it as the AI equivalent to the experiences we have as a kid, right? It's often used in algorithmic trading or, say, investment optimization, where the model is continually refining its strategy to achieve better outcomes. Each of these learning styles fuels different types of treasury applications. And we're going to talk more about that during the use cases in a little while. But whether it's forecasting or risk modeling or fraud detection or cash optimization, each of these styles has a role to play in treasury. And that's why it's important that we have this baseline here. All right, so with that out of the way, let's go to the next slide and take a look at how it is that AI systems are organized. This is some more terms that you probably have heard if you've recently read any trade journals or walked around a trade show floor. Uh, the first that you hear a lot about is discriminative models. These are what I would call the detectives of the AI world. They analyze data and they answer questions like, is this transaction normal or not? Is this exposure high or low risk? Discriminative models are great at identifying, labeling, and sorting transactions. Perfect for things like fraud detection and compliance screening and credit scoring, which is really hot right now. Generative models, on the other hand, these are the storytellers, as you might have gleaned from our previous slide. They don't just classify information, they produce new information. These models can draft a narrative. They can tell us about our data. They can synthesize information from multiple sources. They can even simulate what if scenarios. What if we add this factory? What if we expand into this market? So, for example, a generative AI could analyze your month end positions and produce a readable narrative summarizing changes in, say, your cash flow or highlight your trends or even suggest actions that the company should take. The difference really comes down to this: discriminative models are about judgment, while generative models are about expression. And together, they form the foundation of the hybrid systems that are now really gaining a lot of traction in Treasury. Hybrid systems blend the precision of discriminative AI with the fluency of generative AI. What does that mean? Well, let me give you an example of how this all works. Say a discriminative model flags a payment as being potentially fraudulent. This is a big use case these days. A generative component could explain to you why it was flagged. Maybe the timing was unusual. Maybe there's a deviation from the vendor's history. Maybe there's a mismatch to the invoice details. It tells you why it was flagged. And this, to me, really makes AI usable. And it's exactly that evolution toward AI that's both powerful and understandable that's driven by the rise of what we're calling large language models, or LLMs. Next slide, please. So LLMs are really exciting when it comes to AI. They're trained on enormous data sets and are capable of performing some of the most human-like tasks in computing. Things like reasoning and summarization and Q&A answers and text generation, the types of things that we'd go to a seasoned treasury pro like you and ask you a question and expect you to spit out an answer. Well, for treasury professionals, LLMs mean being able to ask a system questions like, hey, summarize, you probably wouldn't say hey, but hey, summarize my daily cash position changes, or maybe explain liquidity exposure by region, and then get back a coherent and contextually accurate answers in just a few seconds. And what makes LLMs so useful is that they can be tuned for specific domains like treasury. You don't need to train a new model from scratch. You can simply connect one to your organization's data. And that's done through things like prompting and retrieval and fine tuning, which I'll let the smart guys at Kyriba talk about later if they want to. Um, of course, one major concern when it comes to LLMs is what you've probably already crossed your mind as I've been speaking. And that is, all right, so how accurate is it? How can we ensure that the information it produces is factual and compliant? Well, the answer lies in something called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG for short. Next slide, please. When we think about RAG, this is how organizations can make LLMs what I'd call trustworthy. Here's the idea. Instead of letting a language model rely solely on what's learned during training, RAG connects it to your company's own knowledge base. Maybe it's your treasury policies, maybe it's your bank agreements, maybe it's your internal reports. Then, when you ask a question, the model first retrieves relevant information from your data and then generates an answer that's grounded in those facts. It could even cite sources. It's reducing the possibility of these hallucinations that we hear so much about. But it could also improve compliance and help give you some more confidence in the results, which is one of the biggest concerns Treasury and finance pros have about AI. So for treasury teams, when I think about LLMs and RAG, this is really a game changer. You could use RAG to compare, say, bank contracts, or answer policy related questions, or generate summaries that align with your internal controls. And you can do it all with traceability and auditability built in. So now, with these pieces in place, from AI hierarchy to learning styles to model families to LLMs and RAG, now we can turn our attention to how it is that Treasury professionals are really putting AI to work. Next slide, please. And where we stand with the current state of AI in Treasury. Next slide. So the fact is that it's AI isn't something that's coming. It's already here, and it's reshaping how finance and treasury teams already operate. According to surveys of CFOs by a number of different analyst firms, 78% of all finance leaders believe that AI is going to fundamentally reshape the finance function within just the next few years. And that's really not hype. To be quite frank, that's recognition of a shift that's already underway and is already picking up steam. And what makes AI so transformative is its ability to deliver faster, more accurate insights, right? It gives you the real time visibility you've been chasing for decades if you've been around that long. But it's important to remember that AI isn't replacing our human judgment, it's enhancing it. I want you to think about it this way. Treasury's always been about balancing risk and liquidity and return, right? And that requires expertise and it requires context. Well, AI doesn't make these decisions for you. It's going to give you data driven foresight to make them with greater precision and with greater confidence. And we're already seeing early adopters achieve faster closes and more reliable forecasts, and certainly fewer manual errors in some transaction processing. Next slide, please. So the question you might be wondering is, why is it that AI is so is generating so much interest? And really, it's not technological. In many ways, it's economic and organizational. First, there's a talent shortage. We know that treasury and finance teams are being asked to do more with less, and that's increasing just like the adoption of AI. Open positions and data analysis and financial planning, they're being unfilled in many organizations. And AI, well, it offers a scalable way to bridge that gap. We also know that a lot of you have margin pressure, right? Rising operational costs, tighter budgets. That means efficiency isn't a nice to have, it's a must have. And AI enables teams to automate repetitive tasks and reallocate talent toward those value added activities. Yeah, things like data analysis. And third is competition and regulatory change are accelerating in a big way. We know that organizations, big and small, are facing more complex compliance requirements. And that's true whether it's data security or ESG disclosures. AI helps you parse through those regulations and identify your risks faster. And of course, data complexity is exploding. We might be getting rid of paper, but we're certainly not getting rid of documents and certainly not data. I know of one bank that receives a new pallet of servers every week just to be able to deal with the data that they have to manage. Treasury is no longer just managing cash, it's managing information. And you do it from, if you're large enough, from dozens of banks, maybe from multiple ERPs, and from a whole hodgepodge of systems, potentially all across the globe. And if you think about it, well, a lot of the traditional technologies we have simply can't keep up. Well, AI can. And so the question is all right, so how can I use it to solve today's problems, Mark, not the theoretical problems of tomorrow? Next slide. So what we find is that there's AI is already solving some of Treasury's biggest challenges. And there's a few things that AI can definitively do right now. It's excellent at extracting and classifying financial documents instantly. No more manual keying of bank statements, no more keying of invoices and remittances from suppliers. It can automate data entry and reconciliations, and that can ensure accuracy, whether it's between your ERP, your bank, your accounting systems, your CRM, whatever systems you have. AI can also today analyze massive data sets in seconds. And it's already percolating things like trends and variances and outliers, the types of things that we might miss or require lots and lots of time to identify on our own. It can also detect anomalies and prevent fraud. And it does it by learning from your historical transaction patterns. Today, fraud is at an all time high. And fraudsters are leveraging sophisticated technologies like AI to get better all the time. So each of these capabilities is grounded in real deployable technology. These aren't pilot projects, these aren't prototypes. These are the types of things that you can do today. And when you put them all together, well, now that creates a more connected treasury operation, one that's faster, more transparent, less resilient. So now let's see how that works in practice. I'm going to walk through a couple of finance use cases, and I'm going to let the Kyriba team talk about the treasury use cases. Next slide, please. So the first use case that your organization is probably already using AI for, Craig, next slide, is accounts payable. I'm just going to plow ahead, Craig. There we go. The dramatic pause, though, I mean, AP does deserve its own dramatic pause, considering how inefficient it's been over the years. I mean, when you think about it, AP has been one of the most labor intensive and time consuming functions we have in finance, but it's also been one of the earliest success stories for AI in finance. And it's really easy to see why, right? So when we apply AI powered solutions in AP, now we can extract invoice data automatically. We can flag duplicates and suspicious transactions, allowing us to add another layer of fraud detection. We can route invoices automatically without even knowing who the purchaser is in some cases. It can match to POs and to proof of delivery receipts with accuracy we could never get from OCR or traditional systems. And all of this comes together to provide a process that's faster, cleaner, and more controlled than ever. Now, on the flip side of payables, let's talk about how AI is transforming AR. And if we think about AP being the most labor intensive function, well, AR is really close behind. Um, AI can now be used in accounts receivable to predict things like when a customer is likely to pay based on their past behavior and even on market conditions in some cases. It can automate the follow-ups and reminders to customers. Oops, Craig usually pays me in 30 days. It's been 41. I better automatically send him a reminder to make sure that he hasn't misplaced our invoice. It can even adjust the tone and timing dynamically based on the customer or the timing. So if Craig hasn't paid me in 75 days, AI can automatically adjust the nature of that letter that it sends to him, reminding him. Maybe it's more stick than carrot. It can also segment our customers by risk or responsiveness. So now that we have some economic uncertainty and can help automatically flag those customers who we might want to pay a little closer attention to, or maybe rein in their lines of credit. There's a lot of things that AI can do in accounts receivable, but it's also helping revolutionize the way that audits get performed. Next slide, please. Yep. Um, so for decades, audits have relied on sampling. I know, it works. Testing a small percentage of our transactions, identify some risk, and then take action. Well, AI changes this paradigm completely. With AI, auditors can review every single transaction, not just a sample. And the models can then detect control risks and spot unusual patterns using that historical data that it looked at. It also automates the collection of evidence and documentation. When I talk to auditors, they tell me that they waste lots of time pulling together all these documents. And with AI, it can do it instantly. And what's really impressive is because it can integrate with so many different data sources, it provides us with a comprehensive picture as well that over time can help us identify trends and anomalies across our entire audit cycle. So when we think about using AI in audit for Treasury, this is really going to help translate into stronger internal controls and, yes, even fewer year end surprises. Now, if you think that's impressive, just wait until you see what AI can do for reporting and analytics. Now, when we think about reporting and analytics, right, in large part, it's a backward looking process, right? Tell me what happened. Well, with AI, we can start to look forward. Tell me what will happen. So, in other words, instead of manually compiling spreadsheets, which Treasury teams waste a lot of time on, they can now use AI to generate real time dashboards. And they could pull data directly from all these different sources and automatically detect variances and outliers, highlight those key drivers, and even recommend next steps in some cases. Predictive analytics take this a step even further. Predictive analytics can use AI to use past performance to forecast future outcomes and model different scenarios. So now instead of being a scorekeeper, we become a strategist. And the best part of all of this is that these reports can be personalized by role. So a treasurer can have a different report than a controller, than a CFO, or a VP of finance based on what their rules are. And there's one other area that we wanted to focus on today, and that is fraud detection. Today, fraud is evolving faster than many of our traditional controls can keep up. The good news is that AI really has the potential to help treasurers stay one step ahead. And while some of this is more aspirational than some of the other use cases we'll talk about today some organizations are already using AI to detect anomalies. What the technology does is it continuously analyzes our transaction patterns. It flags those anomalies in real time. All right, hold on a second. This vendor usually sends us 2 invoices a month. For some reason, we have 22. Their invoice is usually for $5,000. Wait a second. This one's for $75,000. We usually get the invoice on the first. Wait, why is this coming here at the 22nd? And what it does is it can look for these changes in timing or amounts or maybe even approval flows, and then be able to flag them and have somebody take a look at them. It also learns from your organization's actual data. And this is key because this is that machine learning. It helps the technology get smarter over time. And what this does in a fraud environment is it helps you adapt to new threats and reduce those false positives, right? So it can really provide peace of mind. So as you can see, AI isn't just abstract technology. This isn't just aspirational. There are things that organizations are already doing with AI today to help make their organizations more nimble and more efficient and make better decisions. And to talk more about that, I'm going to hand it off to my friend Craig.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was excellent. You covered a lot of material, and I'm juggling 2 screens as opposed to the normal 3. So your slideshow is buried behind there. I had to keep digging for it to find it, but that was great. But yeah, as we continue the discussion on TMS use case, I'm going to bring up another slide deck, and we'll move from there. So may just pull that up so you can see that shortly. Yep, should be shared. And yeah, so we're going to go into a couple of the what's currently happening. What are some of the perspectives? And I really liked how Mark went through laying out the language that was used, also gave examples in a number of different disciplines within finance. And we're going to spend most of our time in treasury, but I think it's useful for all of us to know where it sits across the board. And some of the examples, that was very instructive. I want to spend a little bit of time on some of the research that shows where people are today. If we look at what's the current state of AI, Mark shared some statistics. We'll go through some more, but let's look at these currently now and see what we have. So the use of AI tools. What are people using personally? We can see we've gone from 54% a year ago to 70% are using them for self-learning or other personal uses. So we're becoming familiar on our own. We see a jump from a third, 1 out of 3 to 1 out of 5 for using it for work, whether it's research, analysis, whether it's embedded in a system like Kyriba, or it's done through your IT group. You see it being used for work. And testing for work, as you expand that, we've seen that's grown from a quarter. We're testing now 37%. And so that continues to expand. We're certainly finding lots of errors and problems, and people are fixing them, but remaining optimistic. So Mark talked about generative AI, AI that creates things. And this is interesting because there's, AI that detects patterns, mostly detects patterns. We think about the machine learning. We talk about things that create, like generative. And then we'll also talk about agentic AI or agents that do tasks, that coordinate other tasks. And maybe there's orchestration of doing tasks together, putting them in a sequence. But the uses of Gen AI, what are people doing? Pretty similar from the 2 years. If you look at the 62% to 63%, okay, essentially the same. A little bit of an increase in evaluating counterparty exposures using public information. Okay, a little bit of growth there. Notable growth in evaluating FX exposures has gone up over half. Expect that Gen AI will help in terms of evaluating the exposures an organization has to FX. It's in multiple systems, maybe in multiple people's heads. How can we use AI to do that? Your peers believe that's the case. And if we look at evaluating and recommending investment options, well, that's scaled from about 1 out of 3 to 4 out of 9. None of these areas are going down. I think that's pretty useful. Agentic AI, the AI that does things, that can call other AI activities, can use machine learning, can call agentic AI, can do tasks, can connect to other systems. What's the familiarity? We've got 32% have used agentic AI, down to we're using agentic AI within my department about 1 in 5. So it's beginning to be used mostly in systems that have those capabilities. But you can see that extension of I've experimented with it, to we're testing it, to someone in the company uses it, to someone in my area. What are the other challenges? Where do people see that there's an opportunity? We're going to have a poll question come up in just a moment. What are the specific areas or challenges AI is expected to address? So we've gone from 2/3 to 3/4 of cash forecasting. Risk management is now closing in on 2/3 of people believe that that will be able to be addressed, and decision-making and manual reconciliation processes are still below the halfway mark, but still making progress. So I'll stop there for just a moment to talk about some of those challenges that we've seen. And I am still suffering from the lots of things on the screen. I'm used to having more desktops. So there it is. It's buried. I'm going to stop sharing now. But that's the quick overview, our overview of what's currently happening in AI. It is the hot topic. This is the topic people are looking at. And you may have experienced a situation where it seems like it's hype, or you think it's real, or there's an element of, there's definitely some opportunities it's getting there. I guess if you were completely skeptical, you wouldn't be on a 3-hour workshop on the topic. So I think all of you are the believers in this, that AI is making a difference and will make a significant difference. So those are some of the perspectives. I want to pop up the first poll question. Let everybody take the first poll question. When I say I want to pop it up, I mean Brian will pop it up. So where is your current understanding of AI in Treasury? Where do you put that? Let's say before this workshop started, how would you rate yourself? Just so we have a sense of this. Hopefully it'll change by the end of our session today, but I wanted to include that. Give everybody a chance to key in the information. So and I'll just mention that Kyriba, Tom and Felix, you guys are on deck for current state and TMS use cases. So I'm looking forward to that as well. That'll be ready to go in just a moment. So love to see if everybody can answer that. That would be really helpful. Look at that. 44% limited, somewhat knowledgeable, 41%. This is a humble crowd. I'm really appreciative of people filling this in. Looks like we've had, almost 300 people answer this poll question. There's more on the session today, but it's good to see that response. We'll include the response totals in the materials that we send out. But yeah, thanks for doing that. And Tom and Felix, you guys are up. What else are you seeing from the current state of AI in Treasury?
That's a great start. Thank you, Mark, because I think it's such a good foundation, especially the poll question. I think is for me is somewhat validating in terms of like the sentiment and what we see day to day when we interact with our community, whether it's customers, prospects, partners, so on and so forth. And that's exactly why we have so many people, I think, on this 3-hour workshop as we kind of go through it. I think one of the things that I wonder as well in that poll survey, specifically the one that you shared prior to the new one, Craig, is that 50% in terms of like adopting AI for work related things. I wonder how much of the other 50% that aren't doing it are not doing it because of like security, compliance, and things like that that are maybe, you know, handcuffing us a bit. And that's honestly why, from our point of view, in relation to that right there, my question would be, you know, how much bigger would that be if maybe you took out that variable of we're not allowed to, you know, because we do hear that sometimes as well by some companies top down. So I think that's going to evolve, but that I think is something telling, I would say, and it'll be interesting to see what that looks like next year.
Tom, I know you talk to a lot of CFOs, and I'm curious when you're talking to CFOs about AI, what's their expectation for the knowledge level that they expect their treasury and finance leaders to have when it comes to AI? Obviously, CFOs are all in when it comes to AI. Do they expect their executive leadership teams to have a high level of understanding these days?
Um, if I could be provocative, I would say the good ones do. Yeah. You know, I think that is the expectation. I think though, what we'll see evolving here, and we'll kick into our piece now, kind of highlighting what we're observing from the market and also how we're adapting that to Treasury specifically. Um, I do think that part of it is kind of like expectation management as well, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to find value in anything we do, whether it's implementing a treasury system or utilizing AI. And I'll credit my friend Felix here as well, who pointed me to the book that I'm currently reading on this, which is it's called Reshuffle. Encourage anybody, tech nerds, things like that on the call that are encouraged by that. But you know, the premise of that is that we can't look at AI as this, oh, it's only valuable if it saves me time. You know, it's about coordinating, right? And it goes to your original, you know, early part of your presentation there, Mark, which is AI. We need to look at how is it helping us get to a result quicker or helping us make a decision quicker. It's not necessarily saying, oh, I saved X amount of hours in my day or whichever it would be, or, you know, we were able to eliminate these functions. It's more about doing the coordination that we all have been doing for years and years and years at a human level. Can AI kind of help us transform that? And that's really, I think, the mindset shift that we all kind of have to go through here, because we just try to boil down anything AI related to how many headcounts does this count for? How much time does this save? It's I think it's an exercise in futility, especially at this juncture of the technology itself. Let me kick off here, I guess, and I'm going to jump in to start here and kind of bring some life, and then Felix kind of will back me up from anything thereafter. But I think you guys should see my screen on your end. Cool. Just to double click, I think a little bit on what Mark was saying, and when we talk about this AI, right, and all encompassing, we can break down AI, I think, into its different components and its different utilizations, and then the back end actual technology that is doing it. And we're not here to be pedantic. We're not here to be scientists and say, oh, it has to be, you know, it's this or that. But AI is kind of, I think, has been, you know, somewhat misunderstood over the years, and now we're all kind of learning kind of the different methods and styles of it. And so you see here, and it kind of works left to right. You know, when you look at the left, rule-based automation is what has governed technologies in treasury and finance for decades plus now, right? When we look at you know, technologies and like a treasury management system, majority of everything that has been developed since, you know, the 90s has been rule-based automation. That's not artificial intelligence. It's kind of, you know, deterministic, kind of logic-driven, kind of sequential ways in which you orchestrate, you know, processes to run. But it's just rules-based, right? It's very much orchestrated and controlled by the human to say, here's our policy, do this step first, that step second, and we use the technology to orchestrate it. Then you evolve to machine learning. Mark brought out kind of a key use case. It was Kyriba's, actually, from our point of view, that was our first experience in AI going back to 2017, 2018, which was implementing fraud detection, using advanced technologies to identify trends, exactly what you said. This payment breaks a norm, and that's based off of an advanced learning model. And there's much more application to machine learning. And we do that, and we see that in forecasting processes, being able to extrapolate trends and forecast off of historical learning patterns. That's machine learning. Then that extends into predictive analytics, which is leveraging the information that you have, both rules-based and pattern-based, to introduce kind of what is to come and how to do things and prescribe differences. And then, of course, what we see more and more obviously growing is within generative AI. And again, what that is, for, again, to be definitional here, I guess, for it, the X% that are using things personally, I'd assume you're using OpenAI, you're using Anthropic, that's your generative AI experience. And now we're bringing that and putting those and seeing that those things come directly into the technologies themselves, such as, Kyriba, and how we orchestrate things ultimately. When it comes to CFO, though, I would say we did our own internal surveys of the market to kind of get a grip on, where is the market at today in terms of mindset in relation to AI, adoption of AI, and the utilization of AI. On our study, right, this is maybe a little dated, right? Excited is a little bit subjective, but we saw about 50% kind of excited there. That's just going to continue to grow. But 8 out of 10 are concerned about security and privacy. That's the more telling. That's a very big kind of gap there that we have to fill. To me, I look at that number as the 2 out of 10. Maybe just aren't aware or aren't asking the right question, because to me that should be 10 out of 10. Right. Again, I think it comes with awareness on that. And that's where, then, your partners in the space, the strategic treasurers of the world, and the technology vendors, are able to help assist and kind of bridge that gap, because that cannot be ignored. And to put it in perspective in different outlets that I get an opportunity to present at, the example of this that I always bring in terms of why should a CFO could be concerned, why should anybody on this call be concerned, it's as simple as this. If you're using those open AI models for your own personal use, and again, I use them as well, clean an email up, right? Help me draft this, right? We all do it. I'm not prideful. That's, use the technology as it exists. If you're using those things, I encourage you, if you haven't done so, go back to that tool. Let's say it's OpenAI, and ask it, tell me about myself. And based on perhaps a couple of years of using it, because it's been around for a while, it has identified and learned patterns and experiences from you. So it can tell you things back that says, oh, you are this, and you focus on these things, and you usually are doing these things, and you're, whatever it is you're doing, right? My wife uses it for designing, right, things for the house, for example, right? If she were to ask it, they would probably say that you're inclined to these things. So it's learning from you. What does that mean? Well, if we're using open AI technologies, for example, and we're pumping that with financial data, it's learning that. It's not learning that I like home design or I like sports or whatever it is that I'm interacting with it. And it's now learning your company's liquidity levels, your debt levels, your forecasted information, potentially your bank account numbers. So we have to keep that in mind. That's the area of concern that we have to make sure that that gap that we have to bridge, that introduces and secures the data, which is we hold very sacred, especially in the world of treasury, especially for sensitivity of the data that we ultimately own. We cannot expose that to the external world. It's far too dangerous. In terms of like the utilization of AI, and we're going to come back maybe to that throughout the workshop here today, and the various kind of talk tracks that we've organized with Craig and team here. The best kind of utilization and application of AI, we want to kind of, it's easy to kind of showcase and kind of use this experience to kind of highlight how we envision and how we see the use of AI being done in the world of treasury here. And we'll use our framework here, which is TIE, to kind of showcase that for a few minutes. This is not a plug or anything like that. It's really just to kind of understand the philosophical difference in the way we're approaching AI, perhaps, than we're seeing in the rest of the finance technology world. TIE stands for Trusted AI, and it stands for that for a reason. One is we've used forums like this, and we've used our community to help us build the AI for the today. Because we understand treasury, right? We understand the personas. We understand that we are people governed by rules, compliance, policy, and we do not just take whiz-bang technologies and implement them and fully trust them. And so we brought customers into that journey, co-innovating that, using real examples to say, how is it that you want to use that, and building that into the product itself. That's part one. Part two to trust, though, is that the sensitivity of that data is something that we hold very sacred as well, right? And everybody should. No data is getting shipped out and being sent to those external language models to be learned. Everything is self-contained, it's self-controlled, it's isolated, it's not commingled, it's not learning your data across somebody else's data. We cannot tolerate that. We do not live in that world, and we have to maintain that for the foreseeable future. That's not that is not, we are far from that ever being a norm here. In terms of the experience itself, and I'm not going to go through, the Kyriba application. For those that don't know, we're happy to come back to that at another time. But TIE itself and the generative AI experience in a technology, and the way we've built this out and launched this is it's embedded in the technology itself, right? And when I've talked about the use of AI today to our customers, is you should approach the use of agent AIs like TIE as your own personal employee, and you should think of it as hiring a new person to your company. Meaning, if I get hired to your company, you're going to regulate me. You're going to track me. You're going to monitor the work that I do. You do not just set me off and say, off you go. And I trust you inherently. And again, I think we have to insert that reality that TIE, the AI, you have to make sure that you're monitoring it. You have to give it the context like you would give me if I were to come and be your cash manager. You're going to tell me how I operate cash at your company, the compliance and policies that I follow there. But it is your sidekick. It is your co-pilot. It is the thing that you're going to use day in and day out to help you in terms of navigating your day. But also we see AI as a great enabler to a technology adoption, which I'll highlight here. So as an example from an AI experience, as I'm coming in and if we think about prior experiences to current experiences, very often everybody lives in some way, shape, or form, like what I see here, which is at the beginning of my day, I'm going to look at output. I'm going to receive information. I'm going to understand, are my banks connected? How much cash do I have or don't I have? What do I have available in my investments? What's on my credit lines and so on? That remains. But from there, we usually do additional analytics. We do additional insights. We gather or collect more data to make a decision, whereas your agent is going to be your sidekick there to do that work, effectively giving you an ability to say, for example, as I start my day here, I can prompt it and just say, good morning. Help me start my day. What's going on in the world? What's happening in my positions? Am I connected? Is there anything I need to be looking out for? Now, when we talk about the third element of trust, and when we look at it, is what you're seeing the technology do here as well. Again, my example is if I get hired at your company, I become an analyst, and you entrust me to go and run some analysis for you. I come back with my output and I give it to you. Me as a manager, the first thing I do is I just don't look at the output. I scrutinize how you got there, right? How did you get to those results? Where'd you get the data from? Is it making sure that it's clean and we've gotten everything? And when you look at AI, the use of AI here, right, we're kind of ensuring that we have that full transparency, which is implicitly important here. So what it's doing here, it's showing you its logic and its steps it's taking. I'll just give it some more real estate. But again, if you're familiar with using open AIs and Anthropic, for example, it shows you I'm doing these things, I'm tracking these things, I'm calling this data, and I'm doing things in a certain way. So it's going to do that to help you, understand, so how it's getting to its ultimate response. And it will go through kind of and show you how it's thinking and what it's using and working off of before it comes back with its final answer here. So now at this point, it's going through a number of different data sources, a number of different inputs, because I've asked it for various pieces of information. It's going and gathering all of that to come back and give me my kind of my expectation of my results here of what I'm looking to do. What we'll do after this as well, though, is we'll go in and we'll look at how, it also helps from an adoption perspective as well. So here's the output. Again, it takes a few seconds for it to do that analysis, but I think it does it far quicker than if I were to go out and do that myself. But here it gives me a snapshot, and it's doing more work than I've asked it to do. It's not just saying, okay, our overall cash position is $68 million. It's showing me where the largest positions are. It's saying I have no outstanding items to be reconciled. I have 38 payments awaiting approval, and they're in these different statuses. So it's helping me get to the work to be done. And I can use this as my co-pilot, not just to start my day, but as we progress through the day and as we finish our day. Did I get everything done? Is there anything outstanding that I should do before I go home to my family here? Is there anything outstanding that we should be working off of? And so there's those types of experiences that we can do from the use of AI. But adoption is also key as well. technologies are evolving. They're evolving very quickly. And the one thing we hear from the market is it's hard to keep up. And as somebody who uses other technologies myself, I can relate, right? I can't really read release notes every time they come out for the tools we use internally. AIs can be an enabler to that. And so inside of this, we can call up the help agent and we can ask it for additional support around certain topics. This isn't training. This is ongoing enablement. And I think that's an important distinction there as well. I would not leverage AI to give me end-to-end training, but I do use AI to help me points in time navigating certain situations or addressing certain issues. And so here's an example where, let's say that I am operating my daily activity and there's some sort of issue, right, on the system I'm using. My bank statement's stuck. There's a rejection message. I'm not sure what to do. We see this as the opportunity, and we're already observing it, where this can become that help agent. I don't need to call for help. I don't need to go to my partner and ask for that. AI can help us get that enablement done. And it's important that this becomes conversational as well. And what you're seeing in the AI experience, it's not just one conversation or one prompt at a time. I can continue on my conversation with the agent that says, okay, here's what, it's giving me context to say, here's potentially what you're missing. And I gave it a very open question. Like, I don't really know what's going on. Something's not working. Give me some guidance. And it says, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, check these things. Oh, you know what? It's bank transactions codes. For example, I can go ahead and prompt it further to say, it's related to the BTC. Can you walk me through how to set that up? And again, it's going to give you exact step-by-step. Here is what to do especially for potentially one-off things that we're not doing every single day. Those things that we come across every once a year, and you do it once and you forget it. We're all accustomed to that. AI is going to help kind of fill that knowledge gap or that mental gap that you have to address those types of situations. And the last thing I'll just call out on, because we could just wax here for a long time on all the different capabilities, but it's also an enabler for helping you in navigating your internal communications as well as your external communications. So as an example, for those of us going to AFP in the US next week, hope to see you there, and welcome anybody to come up and chat. I will be there. But let's say you're having your bank meetings, right? I want to get a little smarter on my banks before I get to that meeting. What am I doing with this bank, and what activity, what flow, what business, those types of things that you might be doing. We can help, the AI can help, again, do all that analysis for you. I have a meeting with HSBC, that's my major bank, give me a breakdown of my activity with them. I can give it added context. I can have it draft me the emails or draft me the communications or draft me the way that I need to present something. But here's where, again, it's going to go through the entirety of the platform to help pull out the information related to that counterparty. It will help me identify if I have risk with that counterparty. It'll help me understand what flow, what balances and transactions they're getting from us. So I can go to that bank very quickly without having my analyst build me things. I'm getting a jump start on that as well. The last thing I'll call out, as this is finishing getting its analysis, is that mobile we see as being a key enabler to AI as well. Right now, we're obviously working at a desktop-like experience, which is where we spend 90% of our day. But the reality is we also spend a lot of our day here in travel and transit and other things. And from an AI perspective, we enable that on the mobile so we can have the same level of experience, but do it on the fly. Voice activate it. Hey, show me my accounts with HSBC. Being able to do that again on those in those interactions or on the fly is also, again, incredibly, I think, important. I think it's going to be a more of a normal experience that we will all have. I find myself personally, again, using, say, my Anthropic app on my phone more than I actually use an Anthropic on my desktop, because I'm out in the streets or I'm doing something and I have something I want to do. That's where I think that reality that I have in my personal life, it will come back and be kind of that norm that we see as well in our business lives here in what we do. So we'll let that finish off, and again, we can continue on, but here's where we'll finish off here with this last example. But again, there's a lot of practical utilizations of this across managing overall liquidity. I've been using this to kind of look at things at a macro level, but you can use the AI to go very deep at a more micro transactional, analysis level as well. Felix, anything that I've overlooked with your great piece of technology here?
Tom, I think you did a very comprehensive presentation and demonstration of the way it works, and you can see all the activity that is happening behind the scene. And I think we'll explain in bit deeper terms how it works, so everything comes together from an agent perspective. But here you have used very complex query, and you can see the result has come right here. So maybe you can go to the result and explain.
Yeah, so I mean, it's doing what I asked. I have 59 bank accounts as of today. Here's the balances I hold with you, with the bank by account. Here's where the concentrations are across my banking relationship, which regions I'm operating out of. It's showing me my currencies. I have 18 different currencies I hold with you at HSBC. It'll help me understand where I have broader exposures or lack thereof, because I'm deficient in CAD, by the way, which is a problem I got to fix there, obviously. And then also just key discussion points. If I'm going into that meeting, it's helping me understand, hey, I should be talking to my bank maybe potentially about these things. And remember, it is generative, it is interactive. I can prompt this further, with other types of queries about what I'm discussing here. So yeah, that's kind of the show there, I would say, on that before we get into some more of the more technical underpinnings of it all. Any comments there, Craig and Mark, as well, and that I've overlooked, or anything else that maybe I should address?
I don't know about overlooking. I appreciated you showing and demonstrating for the audience how the tool can work within a system, the example being Kyriba, where TIE or your AI activities can, use natural language search, generate the content you want, provide it in a protected environment, and you can see the fingerprints of how it got there, how you can ask questions. Because some of those questions that you asked, it shows you information that your dashboards show just as quickly, but it also pulls up some other things, like for the conversation, like the key discussion points. It pulls up key elements that matter for the relationship that aren't going to show on any individual dashboard. So it summarizes some information very differently and, almost immediately. I think that's one of the, powerful things about using AI in some of these different environments and pulling them together. That's the one of the key takeaways for me.
And Craig, it's an important part of it, because that is a matter of making sure that the AI has access to the right pieces of information and is it orchestrated the right way. We could get a little bit more technical, but what sits underneath of this is our what is called an MCP server, and that's the work that Felix, his great team, and has done and continue to do and continue to refine is the access to that data, such that as I prompt an AI agent, and in this one it's ours, it's Kyriba, but effectively any good AI agent should have that experience, where it will know to go and look at things that maybe you wouldn't have looked at as a human, to go and pull the report that I maybe forgot about. I forgot to pull that report before I did this analysis. An MCP server is what connects the actual language model to the actual underlying data itself. It is the the piece that holds that all together. And one of the key things that we look at as we look at AI is only as smart as the information it has access to. And when it comes to treasury, it's not just about a forecasted number. It's not just about an actual number. It's not just about debt. It's not just about your hedging activity. It's not just about your payables and receivables. It is all of that. And so we're in a fortunate position, obviously, because we have all of that data, but we have to make sure that the AI is tapping into that and doing the right things and looking at the right pieces to give us the right information. That's the hard work. That's the things you don't see, but that's what ultimately makes AI kind of our experience, in the way we look at it. That's what enables that to scale.
Well, intelligence, just to Mark jump in a quick second, but the context matters. That's how we know things, right? The same terms, different items may not matter. So knowing the broader context of treasury, for example, and the specific context of your company data all matters. And so that includes access and it includes security. So those are a couple of key things. Mark.
Yeah.
That's actually what I was going to point out. Is the aha the context behind the data, Tom, or is it something else? What's the aha when you talk to treasurers and they see this type of a solution?
I think today it's about trying to push the boundaries, but stay within our comfort zones as treasurers. And I'm going to put myself in that camp, even though I'm on the technology side, right? But it's keeping control of it as well. Like, I think back to a year ago or so, right, when we were at our user group communities and we were, we were incubating this, we were building this, and we were doing it pragmatically. We were not trying to be the first one to say, hey, because we could plug OpenAI and boom, off you go. But again, that carries a lot of risk. We want to do it pragmatically, but when I would bring up a scenario and say, hey, how many people would leverage and want to use AI to do, cash flow mappings, right? Most of the people are like, yeah, that's great. Okay, how about if we use AI to help actually mobilize your capital and actually invest your cash? And then all of a sudden everybody's hands comes down, right? And the feedback was, well, what if I'm asleep and the AI goes off the rails and starts investing all my cash and breaking compliance and policy? Fair, right? And that's exactly why we did this the way because we can do that. We will do that, but we need to make sure that we're doing this in, the comfort zone that we all operate in, and ensure that it still has the compliance and policy and procedure that wraps around it. The way this has been built and will continue to be built, it is still confined by your company's policies and procedures. If this goes off and is able to sweep your cash, it's no different than me putting that sweep in, but you still have to approve it. Right, we still are operating in reality here, right? Which we know that is going to be, continue to be the way we work here, at least for the foreseeable future, by kind of keeping a balance between, AI in there. So to answer your question, Mark, I think it's about kind of touching the limit, but not stepping over over that line. I do think though, where the education part is and why these forums have 300 people on it, I think people are, it's using these to help people understand it's not just the output. That's the easy part. That's the easier part. What's behind it? That's the work that has to be done. That's the significant amount of investment. That's the sensitive area that should be treated very, very carefully.
And what I would add, Tom, is as well from the prototype to the version that you are presenting today, the version that we are launching, we have been working with many customers in order to enhance the solution. So we work with something like 15 to 20 customers, the big Kyriba customer across the world, in Europe, in US, in Asia, etc., to help us shape the question, the version, the way it should behave. So from our initial prototype that Tom described, that was very early, to the version today, we went through multiple iterations with customer, and that's why we are now a very good solid solution that not only is able to answer a good question, but as well care for the typical treasury people concerned around security and trust. So that's really the iterative work we have been doing, and that's the result you can see.
Yep.
Excellent. This was really helpful. Really appreciate, as we go through a workshop, we go through theory, broad concepts, to maybe some more details, to actions that we'll start on that you'll complete on your own, to demonstration of sorts with real world examples, and then back and forth. So we're spanning that world of theory to practical and in production. So appreciate Tom and Felix sharing that information for the educational purposes that it was. Are we good with that part then?
Good from our side.
Awesome. Excellent time management. We're about to head into our first break. I would like to pull up two questions because we have two polling questions. We do have a little bit of time before our official scheduled break, and we're going to get into, we've got a lot of content in these next two sections as well. So the first one is about using or testing AI. This is digging a little deeper. This is a select all that apply. Now, please read what it says. It says using or testing AI. We have another question. I'll have the same responses with a different about exploring, but this says, what areas are you currently using or testing? From cash forecasting down to we're not using AI in other areas. We're not currently using or testing AI in these areas, and other ensure. So please go through and select all those answers. Once that's done, we'll spend just a moment looking at that, and then we'll move to the next question that's related. We have a lot of good questions coming in the Q&A box. We see those. We will answer those, but it will be after the break. It might even be after the second break when we do some of our panel discussions, right? There's things about hallucination. What if the AI or large language model is wrong? How do we handle those? Lots of good questions in there. So please keep them coming. This is supremely helpful. Let's see, we'll share these with everybody, and I'll just for fun, if you type in either Kyriba or CMLI in the chat box, if we get 200 people typing that in, we'll send out all the results from the poll and quizzes. How about that? That would be the way to go. You can pick either one. Awesome. So looking at these numbers, the top line is we're using AI in other areas. We're not testing in any of these 33%, but we've got cash forecasting number 1, bank connectivity and reconciliation number 2, interesting, and then fraud detection and prevention. Interesting. All right, I'm going to close that. We're going to bring up the next question, which has instead of using or testing, this is, are you planning to explore AI within 1 year? So if you're already using it, let's see. Yeah, this is if you're planning to explore it. So only if you're planning to explore it, you're not currently using it. So that'll be the way to go. All right, so we see the answers. Number 1, cash forecasting. Number 2, fraud detection. So look at working capital investment. That certainly is on deck for what people are looking at. Yeah, surprisingly, how much that's coming up. Well, excellent.
No surprise with the first 3. I think those are the ones that I hear treasurers talking about the most. Tom, do you think there's low-hanging fruit? Do you think there's an application in treasury that's just tailor-made for an AI-powered solution?
Yeah, I actually love this survey because cash forecasting, if we talked about this, I think for the past years, right, it would have always ranked the highest and will continue to do so because it's like everybody's searching for that crystal ball, that magic kind of like pill that we can all take and ease all that headache that we have with cash forecasting. And the application and use of AI there is no doubt, right? We see it, we built it. There's machine learning, obviously, implications there that you can use to kind of help build your forecast. And then you also have AI now that can go back and maybe learn patterns of variances and maybe build that in. But at the end of the day, forecasting still has an art element to it, right? It's still not purely 100% scientific, right? There is still like these things that you have to build. So there's much more variability there. Working capital management, to me, it's good to see 26%. To me, there's a lot more science to working capital management than to overall forecasting potentially. So to me, there is low-hanging fruit there, actually, in my opinion, in terms of optimizing that, especially in working, like from our point of view, with our customers doing like financing, whether receivables or payables. AI can be a great asset there to help kind of optimize what you're doing on your working capital strategies. I think that's low-hanging fruit personally.
Excellent. So everybody, we are going to be back at 10 till the hour, East Coast 12:50, wherever you are, just make the adjustment. So it's 6 minutes from now, we will start. I'll leave the break thing up on the screen. I'll take it down and we'll get started in about 5 to 6 minutes. See you shortly.
Thank you.
Hello, we're going to begin in just a few moments. I'm also trying to get another monitor hooked up so I can see, instead of having 46 things stacked up, have them in a couple different places. So it's great. Hopefully everybody's able to get their drink refreshed and get ready for the next session. Let me reshare. I will share. Tell me if you can see the window. Let's see. Looks like it's there. So in this section, approximately 45, 50 minutes, we're going to be focused on developing and prioritizing the AI list. This is creating the universe of activities and functions you may want to do and create and use AI to help solve those problems. Then we'll have a treasurer perspective and case studies. This will be the broader discussion between Felix, Tom, and myself, and Mark is certainly welcome to jump in there. And then we'll spend a little bit of time on the AI playbook, or the game plan that you see on the screen to the left. I'm just showing it for context because this document here will be available for you to download. We'll be able to share this with you. So we've branded it Kyriba, CMLI, and Strategic Treasurer. We're going to be spending some time in this part of the workshop about opportunities, building the list. But you can see the overall game book or game plan or playbook that we'll have is how do we move through this whole process all the way down to putting AI into use. And this would be through systems that you may have, vendor-provided systems, or it could be within your own shop. So we'll share this more broadly to the group, but I just wanted to show the context. We're going to be focused more on the opportunities and coming with our AI list, our prioritized AI list. All right. So with that, going to start resharing. And no, we're not on another break. Just don't think we're on another break. It's not that time. All right. So creating your AI playbook. What's necessary for creating your AI playbook? What is the list of activities or the AI list that you have? I'm going to step through this. We might go back and forth on a couple different slides here. But if we think about what's the area that you're focused on to use AI to help your process, what are the tasks, the broader task, and then the sub-activities of those that need to be changed. We think about what solution type is needed. What will be the tool location of the solution? Is it in-house? Is it broad? Is it within a provider like Kyriba? And then the first part of that will be the impact, the effort, and the risk. And so we have more information on that as well. The list is broader, but I wanted us to start thinking about that. So with that, the first part is if we look at building an inventory of what are the potentials, how do we start there? So what's causing you trouble? What's a challenge? What's taking up your time that you know could be automated in some way, that could be more fully performed, more rapidly done, and either save time, which is one aspect, or helps your team focus on the most valuable tasks that they can do for the organization. The other aspect is, can you break a job down to its component parts? So if someone said, I need to, I'll just give an example. I need to pull in bank balances from 6 banks, pull them in, organize them into a cash position worksheet, categorize them, and determine if they're today's activities or not, and then make decisions from them. That's a significant amount of activities. So you might break that down and say, okay, I can pull in these 5 banks directly through a host-to-host or an API. There's 2 other banks that there's no connection possible. There's only an online screen. And so maybe you're breaking it down to, how do I access it? How do I pull in the information? So you can break those down into components. And so that's a key thing, is you come up with this inventory of what you want to do, and then figure out where you can start to provide a proof of the concept of what you're trying to do. Then we move on to prioritization questions and then planning questions. Prioritization questions helps you force rank or rank the activities that you want to do. The planning questions is the step afterwards. Where are you going to go from that? And I'm going to share some modified examples just so you can see and have a sense of what occurs. So if you look at the top here, you can see different areas, and your list may look different. We've modified some of the things that we have, and I've just put some examples. And so don't think that this is, you're peering into our business exactly. But instead of just talking about concepts, let's look at that. So the top one is probably far removed from anything treasury directly, because it has to do with images that we use on our media site CTM file. We use images, we license them, and you have to maintain good records, because anybody using those, anybody selling those will send the bots after you to say you haven't paid for those licenses. And so they will send you automated reports. So we have to make sure we classify every time we use a licensed image, that it's captured and tracked in a database. So all we did here was we captured the information every time it's used. We use a bot. What's the purpose of it? Efforts, very minimal. We can track the image, load it into the system, record the documentation that we've licensed it. Now, your application may be agreements with financial institutions or other activities that you've requested an account to be closed. Have you sent that? Has it been closed off? So your application may be very different. But for us, the effort was very minor. The risk was very low because we were doing it manually or not having a hard time tracking that. And the impact was, there's about 8 hours a month spent on all the imaging and managing that process. The tool we used was ChatGPT. What was the objective? And if we continue on, we can see, what were the results? What was the expected outcome? We would want it to reduce our time 90%. That was a focus on this task. And, what's the status? Where were we and where did we get to? So that would be one example that might be text related. Maybe in your organization, you want to audit bank accounts. You want to make sure that all the accounts are tracked, managed, the status is right. And so you lay out the activities. What's the use case? Or maybe it's FBAR filing. Maybe it's, setting your cash position or sending letters to the bank or KYC activities. So you can sit there and plug in what are the use cases? What are the detailed steps? And then focus on the impact or benefit, effort, and risk. And so this was, these are related to time. Other elements may be related to risk, exposure, could be concentrating funds, what have you. And where are you doing that? ChatGPT, using Kyriba's tie, Copilot within a system, or using Taskade. Maybe another system that you're using, maybe Grok, whatever. You have those abilities to use those to identify the priority list. Once you've put that priority list together, you can, of course, sort by impact, effort, and risk. And I believe Mark made a good point earlier, or he made several good points, but one in particular was focus on low risk, high reward, things that create less exposure, that are simpler. Get some wins doing that, and then you can move forward doing that. So that's part of the prioritization aspect there is, what are the easiest three? After you come up with this list, start on your own, work with a team. What are the easiest three to get started on? Big impact, minimal effort, low risk. Small, think small. Small is big, small is powerful, because if you can link small things together, you can do quite a bit. It's easier to build and it's easier to work. If you have an area that has significant risk, is there a way that you can mitigate that risk easily? Is it an issue of security? Is it an issue of you don't want data being exposed? So how can you mitigate that easily? And this third point, which tasks require less areas and people to be involved? When you're starting or when you're piloting, if you're doing a big task and you're involving 4 areas, that's not a good way to start, because that'll take too much time. That's too much work. If you can do something within Treasury's information, or connecting to one system, that's going to provide you with a much better basis for having success. Try it out, learn it, and then go from there. And then the other aspect is, can this be done within a system that you already use, a subscription system? So, your bank reconciliation tool, your treasury management system, your ERP, can that be done within a system that supports AI natively, so you already have the training wheels? Or is this something you're doing with IT, or something you're doing on the desktop? I think categorizing those is probably one of the safest things to do, and make sure you understand what the options are. Before I move on to the next, I didn't want to leave off my other co-presenters or co-workshop givers. Any thoughts on this as we've stepped through this? I know I've moved quickly. I've talked through some of those concepts.
I would just call out, I don't think it's small. I think it's just pragmatic, Craig, right? I think it's just taking the kind of low hanging fruit. So it doesn't necessarily, you don't need to look at it as small, it's incremental. And I think it's well guided for sure. Don't try to boil the ocean with, and think, oh, I'm going to capture and be able to accomplish this entire thing with AI. It's about being pragmatic, maybe chipping it apart into smaller segments, which we would advise as well.
Yeah, Big Bang is good for universe building, not so hot for automation. But and part of to build on that, Tom, is one of my suggestions would be this is a good time to leverage other stakeholders in the process, right? So, as Craig said, you want to really take an assessment of where you currently stand, understand those gaps and inefficiencies in your process. And one of the things that I often see is that we tend to be insular, right? So we don't look at everyone who touches the process outside our department and understand what they believe the inefficiencies are, or what maybe the inefficiencies are to them. So this would be a really good time to gather around the stakeholders, understand what their objectives are, how Treasury and automation can support those objectives, and then get their feedback on what it is they believe the points of pain are. That'll help build consensus, help drive approval for the project, and certainly will help with adoption down the road.
Yeah, good points. Now, Felix, I know you have a very strong technical bent. Is there anything that you'd want to weigh in here on?
I think the list is very good, and part of education. I think everybody's using ChatGPT, Claude, and tools like that. So I think by using those tools, we really understand the capabilities of AI and the limitation as well. So I saw a couple of comments on elucidation, etc. So everybody's aware of that. So the more you use those tools, the more you will know how they behave, and the more it will be easier for you to apply this knowledge in work. So I think the list is very good. Education is key indeed.
Excellent. So there's some questions in the Q&A box about what tools are being used. Some of the tools that we use Copilot, that's embedded within the Microsoft framework. We use ChatGPT. We also use Taskade, which is, I would say it's particularly good at this orchestration process. It can use the other tools. It's good at orchestration. I would say not as good at generative activities. And then I've started using Grok. We're not using that officially in the organization. We're using multiple ones to continue to see how they develop and to continue to learn and expand our knowledge base. But there's multiple ones. They don't cost much at all. And so we find that quite useful. All right. I am going to talk about just a few planning questions. So when you saw the demonstration of Thai, I keep on wanting to call it Kai Ta, but that's my problem, right? We have a Kai in our office, but
Yeah.
we'll call it Thai. So you had some examples of showing the transparency of how it was figuring things out. So the question is always, how and when will humans need to be in the loop? And that's useful because you need to be able, you don't want a black box that you can't see how things were calculated. There are times when there needs to be human feedback. Other times you don't. You need to let it run through that section. And my mind goes back to the early days of macro building. If you built this big complex macro and you got it huge, and then you ran into a problem and it was this massive thing, you're like, how do I troubleshoot this? And then they eventually made it so that you could step through it and see each step that it took and see where the program abended or ran into the problem and you could fix it. So too, on some of the planning is, where do you need to have some kind of human in the loop? Is it if there's something that detects something that's out of a normal band or it's extremely out of a band, will it bring a human in to say, does this look right? Does underlying data look right? Has something been corrupted? This is a variance. This is something else. So when would humans need to be in the loop? If you look at, the orchestration, if you think of small agents and that do certain tasks, right? Agents are cool. Agentic AI, we use agents to do small little steps, little functions. Well, you string those together. And so is this something that you're going to need to orchestrate these steps? How will that look? Can they be done incrementally? I think Mark used the term incrementally, or Tom said starting small. But how do we pull those together? If we break down large tasks to very simple tasks, and we automate those using these tools, either tools to do, tools to create, or tools to orchestrate, how do we pull those together? The last question here is, can you test it and run it in parallel without impacting core data? So you don't want to be changing your underlying data for sure. But so make sure when you do the testing, you're doing it in a pristine or isolated environment. It's not writing back to sections you don't want to write back to when you're running in parallel, when you're running a test, or when you're running in parallel. These are the three main steps for the first part of your AI playbook. What should I work on? How do I prioritize those? And then when you decide here are the three, what are some of the key questions that you need to ask? Now, I think somebody already mentioned you might want to involve your IT group or other people in the area. These should not be done in isolation. And the fact that you may want to keep it to functions that are done, that is controlled within a particular area, so you're not having to involve 10 people, you certainly want to involve people to see, to learn, and grow. And then you can iterate from that. I'll bring it back. I know everybody who's listening can't necessarily ask questions. They're certainly typing in Q&A in the Q&A box. But Tom, Felix, Mark, other thoughts, things we should be sharing with the audience?
Mark, you
Well,
want to go? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say understanding how the solution allows you to drop in and be able to take a look at how data was or outputs were determined is critical. So um, it's not just a question of how will humans need to be in the loop. In other words, what manual intervention will still be required. You also want the ability to drop in so you can check on things. One thing I hear from finance leaders and AP and AR leaders in particular is that while the idea of straight through processing is obviously very appealing to them, almost as appealing as the Eagles winning another Super Bowl is to me as a Philadelphian. Um, it also scares the bejesus out of them, right? Because it feels like they've lost control. And whether it's getting money into the bank or sending money out, that terrifies some finance leaders. So you want to understand not just what manual steps are still required of a system, but how can I drop in and see what's going on? And I see in the Q&A some questions about fraud. We'll talk more about this a little later, but you want the ability to have that combination, as Tom described, of technology and human judgment. And that I think is really key. And these are questions you want to ask technology providers up front. But I think Craig, you really nailed it in terms of the planning questions. I think these are exactly the right ones.
I would just add, I think it's also going back to the pragmatic kind of approach to it is, um, don't let perfect be the, enemy of good here, right? And maybe good is good enough to start, right? And, yeah, we want to say, and, how can we use AI to do my forecasting process? If that's the expectation, that's, potentially something that is not going to be successful to hit that exact mark, right? But what is the components of your forecasting process, if we use that as an example, that we can do? What is the viable kind of like, output that we could get to, and kind of maybe breaking it down in those segments to achieve the greater result there and be incremental with it. That there's the fair and pragmatic way to use these types of technologies. I think there is a little bit sometimes, in my opinion, in talking with individuals. I think I shared this with you, Craig, at one point, like the expectations we need to calibrate those things in terms of what we expect of them as well. And it's our job to define that criteria as a part of the planning.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tom, because there's a temptation to go after the most complex process in your treasury department first, right? This is the edge case that causes us really big headaches when it arises, and start there. And the reality is that could be really a difficult lift, right, for automation. So go find that. That's why I asked you earlier about low hanging fruit. Go find that low hanging fruit, whether that's a forecast or a report that you do on a regular basis. Prove out the technology, understand how to use it, how to leverage it, and then spread, right, and then expand the use of it to the next report. So I think that's a really good piece of advice, Tom.
The other thing about why you want to start simple is one, this is part of the learning process. It's not just about getting the benefits short term, it's about learning.
Mhm.
The other factor is the edge cases, as Mark mentions, are very complex. But what's happening with these tools and what's happening with our skills and and the ability to use those tools. If the tools are developing extremely rapidly, and they are, anybody who's used some of the AI tools comes across multiple times, you get a little surprised. Like I used Grok the other day, and I created this movie from having a robot juggle hamburgers and have someone eat them. And I was like, in a minute, I did something that was not possible in any way in history because of what those tools are. And I was a little bit shocked by that. And hamburgers juggling by robots aside, the tools are developing rapidly. And so that means the thornier issues that you have, if you start them a little bit later, you're going to have more powerful tools that are more capable of doing that. At the same time, you've increased your skill level. So you've increased your skill level, your familiarity, you've learned by making mistakes, you've learned by doing things right. I think that's a secondary reason for that, to start simple, to start small.
We agree.
There's another question in the box, which is a good one. It says, what should be the key considerations in moving from pilot to actual production deployment? I think security is always going to be one. The second is, we treat it like when you test payment instructions that go to the bank, you test them in test environment. You do a paper test, is the format right? You do a test in the test environment. Does it seem to process through the system? And then you do a production value test, or some people refer to as penny value test. You send something through the real system with the real amount, and then you shut it down. And then you do another test, turn it on, shut it down. And then you test more rigorously with that. I think that type of mindset, this risk-averse mindset, makes sense. The more important your situation is, whatever you're using with AI, how important is your organization, you do that. And you check, you test. You don't just depend upon it. You look and make sure you're running parallel. You make sure you're comfortable, it's coming in within a band. Maybe you even test, how can I create an anomaly? I put in bad data. Will it bring the human in the loop before it says you've got $100 billion in cash, or will it just continue on as if it's knowledgeable? Anybody, any additional comments on that?
Well, I was going to say this is part of the reason that doing an assessment before you get started with technology is so critical, right? You need that baseline. So you need to understand exactly what those systems are that you're integrating with to pull that data from and feed that data to, and what those outputs must be in the process, and understand what the objectives are. So while you're talking about raw output, right, empirical data in your example, Craig, I would also argue you want to understand what are the benefits we're trying to achieve. Is the data's right? Did it save us time? Did it save us money? Was it easy to use? So we want to make sure that all along the way you're setting objectives for each phase of the automation project and measuring as you go along, so that whether it's just data outputs, or it's the benefits you're hoping to achieve, that you have you're sure that the technology is doing it at each phase. Tom?
And yeah, think of it is at its core, it's still a piece of technology. So whether it's implementing a VBA, right, back in the day, and building something there, or whether it's implementing a TMS, or whether it's this, it's define what is the success criteria. Be again, you have to be kind of fair and pragmatic about it, and approach it that way.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Right, and as you said, Craig, the technology is evolving very fast. So if you remember ChatGPT, when it was released almost 3 years ago, it was a very interesting and very providing very great answer. But if you compare with the evolution of ChatGPT 5, the difference is amazing. It's much more precise, much better, and we can imagine that it will go in that direction. So it will keep improving. So whatever limits you may found today, so it's very good to test the limits. You should imagine that in a few months, few years, things are going so fast that those limits will be removed. So I think we really need to plan for the future. What may not work perfectly today may improve in the future. So that's something that's very important to consider.
Yeah. Hey, Felix, to that end, it begs the question, What question should you be asking a technology provider to ensure that they have a solution that will be able to adapt to the changes that we're undoubtedly going to see in the technology and the business requirements? How can we make sure what should we be asking a vendor to make sure their technology will adapt to whatever might come next for our business or the technology?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question, Mark. Indeed, that's the key observation. The AI world is moving very fast with a lot of iteration. And whatever technology provider you select, you have to make sure that this provider is able to follow this speed. So in the enterprise world, first is the agility, so the ability and the proof that the technology provider can really come up with follow the trend, follow the new innovation. So all those evolution models. So we have seen ChatGPT 3, ChatGPT 4, ChatGPT 5. Make sure that the technology provider will not be left behind by being stuck to one old version. So the ability to follow those. So that's very important. And I would say in the enterprise world, the security is the key, the trust on the model. So I saw a few questions on how do I make sure that my data is not going into the cloud, to internet. And the public model, the one from OpenAI, the one from Anthropic that are public, are indeed potentially not so safe to use. We have seen some early cases of data leak and so on. So we all processing financial data that are super secure, super important. So the technology provider needs to make sure that they provide guarantee that the data will not be used for training. There will be no data leak. So if you use your data from one company, make sure that, I don't know, your P&L will not be available for another data for another customer, and they will ask a question. So I would say that the key question for any technology provider is security, trust. We do financial data, so it's, I think, something we cannot compromise on that. And indeed, innovation, how to make sure that the provider is going to not left behind when we're going to have a ChatGPT 6 type of model or close to that extent. And that the provider is doing that in a very responsible way to make sure that it's not sacrificing security for innovation, or the other way around, putting too much on security and not following the innovation. So that's a very important topic. And to that point, so if you look at Copilot and all those solutions, they all provide some guaranteed, trusted sources. So you have your own private OpenAI, for example. What we do in Kyriba is the same. We provide a safely hosted, securely hosted model to make sure that the data is not leaving. So that's the key question you should ask. Is your provider is able to bring you this guarantee? And we are discussing with many customers as we are launching the solution. Of course, they have a lot of AI questionnaire, very, very precise. So we can see that many customers already, whenever it's about AI, they have a checklist. They want to make sure that data is safe, data is not going to leave, data is going to be fully auditable. We can understand what has been done. So I think it's coming, and we see a customer already and treasurer already have this checklist. I mean, with their probably IT partner.
Excellent dialogue. So yeah, this is all helpful in terms of the context of not only developing and prioritizing the AI list, but some perspectives. And that will slide into the next section, which is the treasurer perspective and case studies, how corporate treasury groups are using or considering, or what different systems they may look at. And so, so this is a discussion style part of the workshop. I'm tempted to show one picture first. We have a couple things we can demo or show briefly. Maybe I'll show this one slide first in terms of, well, or just we talk about what are some of the use cases we could have, do the forecast. Tom had showed some information about exposures or bank meetings. Other people talk about policies. And I'll share one thing about policies first, and we'll continue the dialogue there. I'll just pop it up for a moment, and hopefully you can see that. Yeah, so this is one of our areas said you got to black out a bunch of stuff. So I've done that, but I was like, how are you using AI in different places? So here's an example. This is we have a name of a particular bot we use. But think of this as if you built one to help with policies, or you built one to help with monthly reports. So what are some of the components? I highlighted a few of the components there. There's not many, and this is This one's using ChatGPT. And so, you know, you have a whole instructions that you build and load into the bot. You know, for us, if it's writing, it's like, we don't use M dashes. We use Oxford commas. We use Chicago style guide, whatever those elements are about how you write or how certain things are done or what's the context. So some of those things get loaded there. Additional context pieces get loaded down into this area that I highlighted for knowledge. So here's examples. So if you were doing policies, you would load, let's say, examples of other policies. If there's information about here's how policies are structured, use this for structuring. So this is the context. So anytime you set a tool to do something, it's going to work better when it's in the right context. And so the context is, here's, you know, we're in the corporate treasury department. This is our company. This is our company data and information. And here are the instructions. And as we work it and train it, we continue to add instructions so that the next time it writes a policy or writes a report, maybe a meeting summary report for a meeting you had with your banker, or you're trying to fill out KYC documents and you're building that. So all of those things you load, so it gets smarter. It knows the context. If you need it to think longer on certain elements, you tell it to think longer. And so then when you write your description to build something, write this letter to the bank, follow up on this information, it knows how you think, it knows the context, it knows how you write and what you do. So, you know, you have these different bots that you create these, in this case, we called it ClareBot. We have the instructions and we would load data into it. Now, in this case, there's conversations with your GPT. In this case, it's open, but here we're also showing publicly available documents. So we were doing that in a particular use case. You don't want to make private information so that it can be learned generally. So I'll pause there. I know Tom and Felix may have more input on this particular example, which might be using it, but I think it's helpful to see those different components like you saw when Tom was showing Ty, right? It's like, here's the code that it's generating, here's the output. It's focused on the data within, you know, Kyriba in that example.
So this is good to see. It's validating as well, I would say, from the tech side, Craig. Obviously, this is what we see and transparently exactly as we evolve to our second phase on our agent experience is that. My guidance on this experience, though, I would say that you guys are doing there and others might be implementing in other ways. But if you're going to be doing this in Kyriba here in 2026 as we roll these types of things out, it's not so much as creating ClareBot, which is the cash manager, right? What you should be looking at when you're building out the agent experience is take what the cash manager's function is and break it down perhaps into its various tasks and create the agent at that level, which is you're the bank reconciliation analyst, right? That's the role of that. And it gets you the ability to create that context like you have laid out there, the instruction specific to that and the knowledge that it has for that specific function. And then you build your daily positioning and then you do your, liquidity optimizer and so on. To us or to me, that's how this is going to be, most best structured is kind of breaking down those functions and kind of seeing where the agent aligns to those functions. It's not saying align a agent to a role, it's agents aligned to the functions for today.
Tom, it seems to me that more and more technology providers are advocating that sort of a position. It begs the question, is that easier said than done? I mean, can everyone do that, or is there some distinctions we need to be looking for when we're talking to technology providers of things like these bots? Are there certain questions we need to be asking about how these bots actually do what you just described to ensure that we're getting the best one?
I think I'll take it, and Felix, I would love your point of view on that. I think there's two parts to that question though, Mark. In a way, right? Like, which is as technologies evolve with these types of capabilities, you are gonna, I would encourage, and I think we'll see is you are going to see more collaboration with the ecosystem in building these types of things out, which is leveraging inputs from yourself, from Craig, from the consulting circles that are out there to kind of create, put these in place as a best practice, because there's great opportunity there to maybe introduce things that maybe you weren't doing before that you wanted to do now perhaps, and you have an opportunity ultimately to do it. To the other side of your question, I would say in terms of the application, the actual application and use of it, it goes back to what we shared earlier from our point of view, which is transparency. It's not so much as just giving it context, giving it knowledge, giving it instruction, and letting it run. It's actually seeing how it's running and checking the work along the way, ensuring you and are clear in terms of, if I'm creating that bank reconciliation agent, and it says, nope, all good for the day, right? I don't know about the 300 people on this call. I'd say I don't trust that, right? And I would want to know, where did you look? Did you get everything that you're supposed to look at? And was there any blind spots that you missed? Having it open itself up and say, here's what I'm doing, here's where I'm looking, here's the work I do. That's also, I think, key. No black boxes. It's not going to be tolerated for the 300 people on this call. I'm 100% certain of that.
I agree. Felix?
Yeah, I think, Tom, you're absolutely right. The black box is something that is not acceptable. So in your demo, we have seen that we have all the thinking steps that are here. When you come up with the agent come up with the final answer, you need to make sure that, okay, which report did he use, which tool did he use? So it's very important to have this transparency, be able to check all the parameters. So end of the day, you can trust the answer to say, yes, the agent used exactly the report I wanted. The agent exactly checked the element I wanted, and I can be very trustful on the answer. So black box is not a possibility. And being able to have all those thinking steps and explanation is really key for a trustable agent and AI in general.
But yeah, and I think one of the interesting things I think we'll see perhaps is this resurrection of policy and compliance in a way. What I mean by that is, you started a company today and I jump into your company today and I get inserted in your treasury team. You're just going to teach me something in terms of how the ship's been running, right? It's not like starting from scratch. But as you go and start building out these types of experiences, you're really going to start from a foundational level, right? Which is, you have to give it our company's policy. You're going to blow the dust off that policy and refine that. And maybe this is an opportunity that you do have this kind of like, maybe we should do things differently. Maybe we should ingest something different or a new way of doing things, a better practice, because we've been doing something the same way for the X amount of years, but things have evolved. So it'll be interesting to see, maybe as the technology evolves, do our policies and the way we work maybe adapt as well.
What a great point, because we hear a lot about data hygiene when it comes to AI, but I would argue that policy and workflow hygiene is going to also become a factor here, because if we look at the way a lot of finance departments operate, right? We have those, as you implied, the policies are up on the shelf, and people tend to know them, or at least they think they know them, may or may not always adhere to them. And then the workflows, well, we're not sure why we do some of the things we do in finance or in AP or AR or audit, right? They just happen that way because we've always done them that way. So I think you make a really compelling point that maybe there's an opportunity to take a hard look at everything we're doing in finance, and that, I know that sounds overwhelming on the surface, but I think in some ways it's going to be really helpful to this. No?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really an opportunity to change the existing workflow and the way it works. So AI, as Tom was saying at the beginning, it's not just a way to accelerate the existing workflow, it's really to transform them. So instead maybe of doing the bank reconciliation using 10 steps to do that, maybe you can do it in 3 steps, maybe you can do it in maybe 11 steps, we don't really care. But it's really a way to completely change the way it was done before, because it's not manual anymore, it's not using this mechanism, it's something much more automated, much more AI driven. And that's the opportunity to rethink completely the workflows. And that's what we will we try to do with TIE. So as we launching the initial version, it was very basic questions. So showing my cash balance, show me my how many cash I have in Europe, and that's very similar. But as we use the solution more and more, we start to come up with different use cases and changing completely the workflow. So instead of going the application and clicking in 3 different reports and 3 different menus, we can just have a question that will answer all that in one go. So this ability to change the workflow and have them personalized based on your own policy is what we believe is going to be the future. Extremely personalized agent using enterprise policy, enterprise blueprint workflows to make the experience unique and really tailored to your needs. So that will be the training, I would say, of the future of agent. Make sure that the agent really understand the policy of your company, the workflows, and you can take the most of it using those mechanisms.
Yeah, so what are other functions and how do these things work? Now, I know most of you have played with AI tools to some extent, and there may be some things that Kyriba wants to pull up. I'm going to share a screen, just show a couple different fairly simple examples in case you haven't seen those. They're not treasury specific, but there's applications that can come from that. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. Okay, I'll share this one. So I'll share the comparative analysis. So here we're looking at ChatGPT. Most of you are probably familiar with that, right? So there's a box you can plug stuff in. I'm even using the free version here for this example. I'm going to pull up, I rewrote a script. I don't know if you can see it, but I'll copy that. And then I type it in here. I wanted to create 8 different sentences. Let's say the AFP is coming and I want to meet with people. So I want to mix up my sentences. Can we meet briefly to share what other companies are doing and hear what you are wanting to work on in Treasury? Please use the link below to select the meeting time. Fairly boring. You may have other examples of letters or things. This is just a fairly simple way of doing that. Create a new chat. So put that in there, hit enter. And so it'll go ChatGPT. Here's 8 alternative ways of saying that. Maybe you found it's easier to write. If you use LinkedIn, you probably see, write a note using AI, right? Very simple. You can say, make it briefer, make it more casual, personal. Those are all things that you're probably fairly used to. Other examples, I guess I'm leaving more stuff up on there, but let's say we wanted to do something related to risk or a summary of a bank, like Tom was saying. So how can Grok help? Write a 200-word summary of the company Kyriba. Anybody know Kyriba? Identify the largest risks that they may face. Bullet key financial and company information. And you can say quick answer or think harder, and it'll go along, search the web, pull information up about that, tells you about it, summarizes it. You're like, hey, I like it. Here's information, other data you can have. It can pull a report. You can also tone this not just from the web, but to some other information you may have. So in addition to that, let's say when the information comes back, we want to make it more formal, right? So we'll go ahead and it's doing a lot of thinking, right? So here it goes. It's telling you where it's going. I told it to think deeply. I shouldn't have said think so deeply. Here we go.
It's doing it quicker than if I were to go and pull it for you myself, though. That's what we have to keep in mind is in these experiences, especially we're still early days. It's going to take a bit of time, but a minute is not that long if it is a minute, right? At the end of the day.
And let's say you had to do 4 bank meetings, you could set up a task manager orchestration to do one after the other to summarize that information.
Yeah.
And show, here's information. It's continuing to build that. And then at the end, I'm not going to let this run forever. Yeah, so here's the summary, right? Here's what they're doing. Going to share information about the company, when it was founded, headquarters, all that good information.
Yeah.
And then the key risks. What are the key risks of being in the fintech? You move funds. All those things will come up. Tells you about the history. Great summary. What did that take? 2 minutes?
Less. Just felt like it because you're on a webinar.
Yeah. Okay. It felt like forever. Now let's say I like that. And then I want to say, hey, turn it into a 3 to 4 page report with links and sources of data, create a PDF to do that with Kyriba's logos and Strategic Treasury's logo, label it confidential. So now you can have it create a report. You can also have it create reports that match your format or your style or your outline. So those are just some other examples of leveraging AI gaining experience by experimentation personally, then expanding that, learning, and growing from there. We'll see how long it takes to create the PDF. This one's Grok. So we use ChatGPT. We could do it in Copilot or Grok. I have Taskade up, but I'm not going to load that one. That's not particularly good at doing that. So there we go. So here it says, hey, I can't really create it right now. I forget which one I did this. I might have done it the other way and done ChatGPT. It created a nice PDF of all the information, pulled in logos, and went there. So yeah, I'll stop sharing there for a moment. Or go ahead.
I think, when I think back to the early days of OpenAI experience like this, there were times that I was using it to do, research, right? Research this company, give me some background. Maybe we're going and talking to them. We want to come in prepared. And I remember, I think it was OpenAI, I think it was ChatGPT, challenging some of the things like, where did you get that information? And then it would come back and be like, whoops, I hallucinated that, I made that up. It would check itself, but what it wasn't doing, it wasn't giving you its reasoning steps immediately. Whereas now you see that evolution, like you showcased there. It's important because what it's saying is like, I'm going to this source to get that information, whether it's a website or YouTube or wherever it said it was getting that stuff. Again, that's what we have to make sure that's important. That is how embedded AIs work, right? Inside of the technologies themselves, which is, from our point of view, where are you getting the cache data from, right? It'll tell you, I'm calling this API to get that information, and I'm going to combine that data with the API call from this, and it's not referencing YouTube and these external websites, but at least letting you know, I'm going here to get that data, I'm going to go here to get that data. So again, as the results come, I don't have to go back and say, how did you get there? I can trust it. I can, trust but verify these types of things.
Okay. Excellent. So it's still working away. I guess I shouldn't have given it the long answer. So maybe it takes 4 minutes to create the final report, but you can be getting your coffee, Diet Dr. Pepper, whatever you need to make that the case. We went through some examples. The agentic side, I think we're almost ready for our next and final break. But I would love to hear some of your thoughts on the correlation between what robotic process automation was, which is sort of like dumb automation, bots to do things, versus agentic AI, agents that do things that are smarter and more capable. I don't know if any of you had thoughts on that, or if you wanted to talk about that.
So I do. So indeed, RPA is just replicating what you would do by using an application. It will click for you, basically. So imagine you got a Kyriba with an RPA, it will be a robot that click on your behalf. So instead of doing the action manually, you will ask this robot to do it for you. So that would be very interesting to achieve. But that's the way. It's very static. It's very deterministic. So it will achieve some stuff for you. Excellent. But that's not groundbreaking. That's not extremely changing the way you are doing your work. Generative AI is much more creative and a way more possibility, as you can see. It can pull information, it can call different API, different tools, and come up with the answer. So RPA and generative and agent are very different. RPA is extremely deterministic, so it does the job quite well. If you want to repeat something 100 times, it will do it for you. While agents are going to have an intelligent aspect that RPA doesn't have. So the example that Tom was showing, I'm going to meet HSBC and how help me prepare the meeting, basically, is not something we'll be able to do with RPA. Because with RPA, we'll have to think, okay, I need to click on this report, I need to click on that report, and it will take a lot of time to set it up. While with an agent, you just ask an open-ended question, and the agent will find the solution for you. It will use all the tools it has in his possession to try to answer the question. So that's completely different. So it's kind of a complete paradigm shift from something extremely deterministic, so where you will say, okay, RPA will help me to automate some tasks, to a complete different way to do your job and be able to answer open question, be able to come up with solution you may not have thought because of this generative aspect, this kind of creativeness, while still using tools to make our web search to make sure that the answer is very relevant. So you see, it's For me, it's completely different. So RPA is definitely a great technology, but more, I would say, since 10, 15 years. That's what has been. One agent is really the technology for the future, where you will come up with much different use cases and much more possibilities. For me, completely different.
Yeah, I think of RPA as that reliable assistant who never sleeps. Agentic AI to me is that proactive staff member who anticipates what you want done next and does it right most of the time. RPA saves time. Agentic AI helps you make smarter, faster, more confident decisions.
Yeah, very good summary.
Yeah, excellent. And so I'll share just a couple slides before we go on break, and then we have two panel discussions as soon as we get back. So if we look at this playbook, I showed you that image before of the whole flow, I believe it was 9 steps. And so this is showing those 9 steps. You'll have the materials provided to you, but these are the steps in order. You'll have the other handy chart for you. First is educate. How do you level up or increase the understanding of the team and individuals and yourself? So how do we gain that, whether it's attending a workshop, a webinar, reading the books that Tom's reading, and then go through the list. What's the list of activities that can be automated or managed by AI? And then this gaining facility with AI tools. So this is a natural flow. I'm experimenting, then I get assistance. I get people to help build these and do the expansion of this activity, especially the more it matters. This could be from your IT group, could be from consulting firms or others. And then there's also the element. Tom had mentioned the quality of data. Mark had mentioned some things about data, the garbage in, garbage out standpoint. How can I understand the data I'm using to make sure I'm not putting bad data in and getting worse than hallucinations? And how do I govern that data so it's not leaking outside the organization? And then this piloting. I'm piloting activity. It's beyond an experiment. And then I will, certainly, run parallel. But when I run parallel, then I move to production. How do I do it in a safe manner, incrementally? Turn it on, let it run, make sure it's working. And then the last 2 elements, and I know this is really quickly, is monitoring and reporting. Let the team know what's working, how it's going. So if you're using TIE and it's creating this meeting for a bank, you're using a tool on your own to fill out some of the KYC documents, keep track of what's doing. How is this performing? How is it helping your organization? Better quality, freeing up time, greater insights. All of those matter. And then as that's shared, you can then expand and scale. You can get more resources assigned to it. Your team is proven faithful and useful and effective in smaller areas, and they can expand to other larger areas. That's the bigger picture, the broader picture. So that's the game plan. And so this is a leave behind, and there's also a document that puts in some more details for that.
Craig, I think this is spot on. Could you just go back to the prior slide though? Because I think it's important to call something out here. And it's why I think when you're looking at the adoption and utilization of AI, do not get grounded in how much time is this going to save me? And I think it's because of the first 3 things that you've listed out there, because, and somebody on our marketing team brought this up and said something earlier this week. And I was like, yeah, you're right. How many times have I used AI to start and finish something that I would have never started before because I didn't have the knowledge or I lacked the information, and it was also going to be too arduous to go get it, whether it was, going and getting the book and reading it, or going to find the guy who's kind of ornery and I don't really want to talk to, who has the information. You know what? I'm just going to leave that go. AI is such an enabler, right? And it opens up the opportunity for us to educate ourselves and learn about things that we weren't able to get to in a time efficient way before. And so therefore it maybe ends up actually adding a little bit more to our plate sometimes, but it's all in the benefit of a long-term kind of way of optimizing the way we work. So I think it's important kind of thing to keep in mind that when I share it, I've been able to use that to help me uncover things that I wasn't aware of or didn't know or have experience in before, to get something started that I would have never started to begin with.
Do you guys have a sense of where organizations get stuck? We know, we were talking about RPA before, and many RPA projects never achieved escape velocity, right? You did little projects, but never really scaled them. We're hearing anecdotally that some early AI projects are getting stuck as well. Do you have a sense of where they're getting stuck in this process that Craig laid out and why?
I think it's too early to say that, Mark. I can't think
Fair
of
enough.
that yet at this point in the journey.
Yeah, there's a pretty famous MIT report which goes into that into some depths, and so that's a useful report to review. What we see within Treasury, it's more people are in this part.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing these other elements, and so spend time on these first three. Also work with the vendors you have that have these capabilities where they've put some borders around it for you. They provided the protective environment of using it within their system, like we saw one demoed in this workshop. And that's where you're going to get success. But as any tool is nascent and it's developing, it's going to be rougher in the beginning than at the end. And so don't give up just because things sucked at the beginning and didn't do what you wanted. So get back at it, right? So there, or I should say, as a consultant, the results were suboptimal. Keep reiterating until they become good. But I think you all know what I mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Are we ready to go on our next break? We're going to take just 5 minutes. We have a lot to cover. This has been actually super fun, more fun than it should be. And we have some more to cover. So we'll be back at 1:55 Eastern time. So 5 before the hour. We've got a lot to cover in 35 minutes. So we will start no later than 5 after. See you shortly. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for hanging with us. 3 hours sitting in your chair with a couple breaks is impressive. So we really appreciate your time, and the comments and questions in the box are awesome. This has been extremely helpful for us. Well, now we move to our final stretch, which is we're going to talk about future possibilities. As a panel discussion, then we'll move on to staff development. I will moderate the panel discussion on future possibilities, and then Mark will pick up to finish up on the staff development. We have a few more comments and finishing things after that. But let's begin. Let me just say a couple rules. So we'll have some questions that I ask the audience, and then each person can respond, or some people can respond. We'll begin with a speed round. We have a second speed round as well, time permitting. I ask a question, hopefully it's provocative, and they have to give the final answer immediately. They can't start with the hedges. They have to say yes or no, but then they can qualify it. So they'll have some time to qualify it. Speed rounds are meant to have answers that are given in 15 to 30 seconds with the answer at the front end. And then we'll move to other questions that we can explore in more depth. So we're going to begin with Mark, Felix, and then Tom. Speed round, everyone can answer those questions, and we'll shift who starts first. So the second question will be Felix, Tom, then Mark, and we'll progress that way for the speed round. So the first question is about numbers. Fraud. Mark, how confident are you on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being extremely confident, 1 being not at all, that AI can consistently reduce fraud risk in Treasury? Go.
10. Unlike human sampling, it can pour through complex, vast data sets and be able to identify anomalies and changes that we would just miss. It's already doing it.
Great. Felix.
Yeah, 10 as well. So as we were explaining at the beginning, machine learning is very good to detect statistical pattern. So 10 for sure. But beware, AI is also used to produce some bad content and attack as well. So I think while AI is very helpful to answer to solve the problem, we also have to be cognizant of all the new threats coming from AI.
I'm going to shift it up, Tom. I'm going to ask a new question because I think we got good answers on that first one. The next one's going to be upskilling of staff. What percentage of Treasury teams do you think will intentionally upskill their teams on AI in the next 3 years?
3 years, 100%. And if it's not 100%, I would question your organization and the sustainability there, quite frankly.
Look at you go. All right. So we'll flip it over to Mark. What about
Agreed,
you?
100%. This is going to be the table stakes because recently I talked to a finance director who automated with an AI powered solution, and they told me, Mark, the technology was the easy part. The people issues were the hard part. We have a real talent drain in finance and treasury in particular, and we're going to need to fix that in order to get the most out of these AI solutions that we've talked about today.
Felix, do you have a different view?
You're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. So definitely the upskilling is a key. So 100% for sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to begin with you again on this one, Felix. Productivity on an annualized basis. What percentage increase in productivity do you expect AI will deliver to corporate treasury operations by 2030?
2030. So I would say gradually it will go from next year to 20%, 30%, and we can expect that to 2030, probably double the productivity for sure.
Wow. Okay. Tom, you're allowed to disagree with your tech person.
No, I would say it's at least that, right? And if we're betting or using gambling terms, I would take the over, albeit slightly. But yeah, I definitely think it'll be 50%.
Yeah,
50%.
Agreed. We're already seeing tremendous increase in productivity in a nascent stage of AI powered solutions, and we don't know what the full impact of some of these emerging AI technologies is going to be. So I think that's probably the floor is 50%, and I think we could be surprised at just how high we get.
Okay, so everybody's drinking the AI Kool-Aid. The last question, it's slightly different from the other one, is the percentage of current work. So that was productivity, and this is work. So different task and elements. What percentage of current corporate treasury tasks do you expect to be automated by AI within the next 3 years? So different time frame, and it's percentage of tasks, not total time and productivity. And so we'll begin with Tom on this one.
And the question is to be automated?
Yes.
Quarter, I would say. I think it's a little bit a little bit hard to answer, I think, but I would say measuring that, I would put it in a 25%. I think as you look at what we were sharing earlier, a lot of that analytical work that you end up doing, you're going to leverage AI to do it. A lot of that, go get me this and retrieve this and analyze it. That's going to be there. So I'm going to put 25%. We could be higher.
Okay.
Yeah, it really depends on how I say 20%, and I think there's an asterisk on this one. It depends on how fast we can scale these projects. I don't doubt we're going to see a fast adoption of AI in Treasury. The question is how fast do we scale it, as Tom is alluding to. So I think 20% is about right, and then from there I think we could see the hockey stick.
All right, we're going to move on to regular non-speed questions. Thank you for answering quickly and specifically. I know that always puts some people at a lack of comfort. So the next question, I'll start with Felix. I'll start with you because I'm picking on you, and we'll go Felix and then Tom. But I'll let you jump into Mark after that. But data analysis and speed, garbage input, garbage output was a consideration pre-AI, and it is also during the age of AI. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what we need to consider and manage with regard to data and AI. You can talk about data cleansing, security and confidentiality, data as a service, MCP. Why don't you start us off?
Right. That's a very, very good question. So indeed, the garbage in, garbage out is something that is very true, especially I would say in the machine learning perspective. So if you look at the cash forecasting algorithm, they need to rely on the past data. So in order to have a very good forecasting, of course, you need clean data to detect seasonality, to detect trend, etc. So that's critical. However, if we think about generative AI, those models, they also come with a large pre-trained data, so billions of data, parameters, etc., which means that even if your data is not perfect, the generative AI can still, by using its very depth knowledge and training, come up with some very relevant answer. So on a very good perspective, I mean, traditional perspective, of course, the cleaner the data is and the better it will be. So cash forecasting, prediction, fraud detection, you need clean data. You need something that you can train your model on. So that's the machine learning that you were explaining, Craig and Mark, together, that the machine learning is very important. However, generative AI is also transformative. It comes with pre-trained model that is going to be very helpful to have accurate data and accurate answer. And that combined with the ability to call tools. We didn't go into much detail on MCP, so that's the model context protocol. That's very technical, but you should see it as an easy way to plug tools. So USB-C equivalent for agent. That's the way agent is going to be able to query your data from your Kyriba, from your SAP, from your Salesforce, from all your tools. And that will ground the model. So even though you need to have clean data for forecasting, machine learning, in the era of generative AI, it can accommodate imperfect data, I would say. You can query data from Salesforce that is not super well structured, but understand the conversation, and out of it be able to give you a rating of this customer, for example. So that's completely not feasible before, because you need something very structured and clean. With generative AI and agent, you can live with unstructured data, something that is not perfect, that is really contextual, very text-based, and still come up with something very, very interesting. So I'm not saying we should not clean the data. Of course, we need, especially for machine learning and cash forecasting. But however, generative AI has this very specific aspect. It can work with unstructured data. It can work with partial data and still be able to come up, thanks to this prediction model of the sentences, etc., come up with very good answers. So that's very interesting, I would say.
I'm going to cut the line, Tom. I'm cutting you, Tom.
Go ahead.
So Felix is spot on here about the power of AI to sort of smooth over some of those bumps in the data road that we see. Here's where I think is an important point we need to get across, and that is he's assuming we're getting the data.
Yeah.
And the fact is that see, aren't you mad? Doubly mad now that I cut you, Tom?
No, I love it.
The fact is all across the finance department, we're not getting the data. We're not getting all the data we need. And the reason is because we rely on either antiquated tools or manual keying, and it costs too much or it's just ineffective. So let me give you two examples. Over in accounts payable, 68% of every invoice that arrives from a supplier, even in highly automated departments, requires manual intervention. It requires manual keying. Over in the AR department, 80% of all remittance documents that arrive, even those that arrive electronically, maybe via email, require manual keying. And in many cases, you're paying a bank to key that data for you in a lockbox. What's going on? Well, it costs so much and takes so long to capture all that data that we don't get it all, or it's miskeyed, or it's not timely. And so AI can't solve for that. So one of the basic things we need to do when it comes to data hygiene is let's take a look at the tools we're using to capture that data in the first place. And oh, by the way, I'm going to take a swig of my AI Kool-Aid here, because AI is great at that. Unlike OCR, which was technology that had some baggage associated with it, natural language processing really does an excellent job of capturing data and capturing more of it and putting it into context. So Felix is absolutely right that AI is going to be able to do more with our data than our previous tools did. But I think as treasury leaders, we need to start asking questions of our finance cohorts and say, hey, how are we capturing this data that I'm going to be asking my AI powered tools to use? Okay, Tom, I'm ceding the floor to you now.
Nothing else to say. You guys both nailed it. Literally nothing else to say. Spot on.
Excellent. So I'm going to skip the third question, which was on impact on activities, tasks, and jobs, responsibilities, because with the final section, we're going to be talking about staff development, and I want to leave enough time for that. So Mark, feel free to bring up any of those questions in your section if you like, but we're going to move on to speed round number 2. And again, same format as before. The first question is about more, and I'll start with you, Tom. Which is more important? Which is more important, transparency in AI decision-making or speed of benefit? Transparency or speed of benefit?
Transparency.
Any additional comments on that?
Think about it as a human, right? Do I want you to be quick or do I want you to be good? You know, there's a balance there, but you know, again, if it's a new employee, I'd rather them do the work thoroughly and prove it out than be fast about it. That's how we have to approach it.
Unequivocally, it's got to be transparency. Our jobs depend on it. Our business depends on it.
Is it 100 to 0, or is there a different weighting mark? Would you go like 90%
Today,
transparency?
100 0.
100 0.
It's got to be. Yeah. Are you okay with only 2% of your data being wrong or being leaked or?
Yeah, transparency definitely the key.
Yeah. There's no margin for error in finance, as we see, whether it's in regulations or fraud. And so, or even our careers, I hate to bring it there, but the fact is that we've got to get this right. And fortunately, there are some guardrails, and those are still emerging in some cases. They'll be better over time, but I think Tom and
And the
Felix are
performance will get,
absolutely
and the
right.
performance will continue to improve. We sat there, you saw the demo, right? I asked it a challenging question. It takes what feels like an eternity because I'm in front of 300 people. But the reality is, 45 seconds is not a lot of time. Like, it's
Yeah,
just not.
and Tom, people don't realize or they don't want to admit how much time we actually spend going back to make sure that data is right and
Yeah.
that the processes were followed, right? So anyone who's had a compliance violation, who's been a victim of fraud, or had to restate their financial close because the data wasn't right. I mean, how much time are we already spending on it? So the fact is that I think it's overstated. Um, how much I think people forget how much time they spend there.
Okay, so Felix, are you going to be bold and brave, or are you going to cower and go with the 100 0?
So transparency is the key for sure. So 100%. There's no doubt. I think we cannot compromise with that. And speed is great, but speed at the expense of accuracy is not acceptable.
Yeah, so I would say 80-20. I'll just say my quick reason for that. All the points about transparency make sense. You have to have those, but the speed to benefit, we're not doing things perfectly in any environment for the most part. To the extent that you can get better benefits and continue to improve, overall, you might do better in that. So I did 80-20, and so we can always fight about those numbers, but certainly transparency leads. Second, and we'll start with Mark on this. Are you more concerned about data privacy or operational efficiency when integrating AI into treasury functions?
Data privacy, and I think this is the big unknown right now. Is I fear that a lot of organizations aren't asking the right questions of technology providers about how that information is being secured, and I don't think that they have the processes and policies in place in their companies on how they want that information governed. And I think this is going to be the next story to be written when it comes to AI is what some of the implications of those oversights are going to be. Felix?
I'm gonna jump the line with the questions and move on, because I think we're gonna get something pretty similar based on just what we had. The next question is for you, Felix, on growth or priority. If this is related to the current adoption rate, what's your view of the current pace of AI adoption in Treasury? Is it in hyper growth? Is it rapid, strong, moderate, or slow, no growth? Current adoption rate.
I would say strong. So we discuss with many customers, and they're all looking at tools like ChatGPT, Copilot, etc., but not yet in their daily operation. We see there's a lot based on the survey that Tom was showing before. There's a lot of expectation that AI will help. We also see, you mentioned as well the survey from MIT where they say 95% of the experiments failed. So I think there's a strong expectation. So I would say, yeah, strong growth, because we'll see that that will come, but definitely not exponential or whatsoever. So we need to see the adoption going further.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, I would say it's picking up. Velocity is picking up. Its trajectory is continued upward, and I think we're going to see continuous growth there. And I would also double back also what Matt was saying. Mark, sorry, calling you Matt. One of the observations I see to his point is maybe they're not asking the right questions. I do think that is becoming a norm. Reason why I know, because I'm asked to review legal language every single day now. Right, and they're not even using AI, they just have AI language in their contract. So to me, that is indicative that the organizational levels are asking the right questions. Now, as it comes down in the treasury, they'll be, you know, in our function. I think that will become a little bit of a norm, but the trajectory is certainly up.
Strong growth, only okay scaling. We've got to get the scaling up.
Okay, percentage, yeah. Tom, we'll start with you on growth. This is between large and small companies. Will the use of AI in treasury functions grow faster at large or small companies? So state what it is, and then if you have a reason, jump in with that reason.
I don't think that you can, I think it's going to be done in different ways. So I'm not evading the question, but I think it's going to be done in different ways, perhaps. I think what we observe in larger companies, there is more of an internal AI experience where it's IT led. We're going to build our own AI experience as a company, and we need data to do that. You're seeing that at the large company. I think the small and medium term company, they're going to be the ones that are going to use whatever's available and accessible to them, and the cost of that's going to continue to come down as well. So it's attainable. So that's my point of view on it.
I think, yeah, I agree with Tom. I think the use of AI-powered tools in large enterprises is growing exponentially. In small organizations, they're using solutions, and there's more and more of them every day. Trust me, I get phone calls from all the vendors, and we're seeing that grow really, really fast.
Felix?
Yeah, I agree definitely with what Tom and Mark said. So yeah, 100% good.
Okay. Excellent. So I'm going to shift down to the last question. Then, Mark, you need to move to be ready to ask questions and flip the script on everything. So I'll ask this question of Felix. How much AI work should be autonomous? When does a human need to be in the loop? Always in these situations? And of course, never, which is not going to be the answer.
It's not going to be never because obviously, especially in treasury finance, we do payment, right? And sometimes large payment. Even in our system, we have the notion of double validation. So someone do a payment, someone else verify it, 4 eyes, etc., the maker checker. So I would say, even though a lot of operation will be automated in the future, some key extremely important operation, if we think about payment or transfer that is made, investment decision, needs to be, we have the human on the loop notion that will be there. And as Tom said, it's like working with AI is like working with coworker. And I think the human will be a manager, kind of someone who validate the work of AI. So some tasks can be done autonomously without validation because they're safe, it's okay and trusted, and you see a lot of success. You can do that. And we can tolerate sometimes some error that will be picked up later. Some tasks cannot be error prone, payment, etc. So here human in the loop will remain. So here we not say 100%. It is going to be always a human participation in those tasks.
Tom, you have 20 seconds to give your answer.
I agree. I think what I like to do is think about 10 years from now or 2035, what's the role of treasury and what's our function? And it's going to be the orchestrator, the controller, the governor of these types of agents. So when you say where is the human involved, it's going to be at the beginning and throughout, right? It's going to be establishing the processes, the principles, the policy, the compliance, all those things to make sure that my agents are working in an effective way. And I am the governor of that on an ongoing basis. That's going to be the norm trait, I think, moving forward.
Excellent job. Thank you, each of you three, for your responses. Now we're going to flip over and we're going to be led by Mark in a discussion about staff development. Mark, you're in charge.
Yeah, so let's start with the gorilla in the room, right? The 800-pound gorilla in the corner of the room, and that is fear. So how as treasury leaders, can we help our teams overcome the fear, or we could say skepticism, that often comes with AI adoption? Tom?
I think it's the incremental utilization of it. And again, not thinking too big. I think taking it a piece at a time and trusting and validating as you go through it to kind of get that experience. It's just like, again, hiring me, you might have fear of that, right? I don't know if that was the right guy, right? What are you going to do? You're going to monitor me to start. And then eventually you're going to find out I'm pretty good. And you're going to do that the same with AI.
Craig?
I would say the education and experimentation is probably the first key part, because if you're playing with it and you see mistakes and you keep playing with it and you learn how to get better at it, that's going to eliminate some of the fear. And so going through the process is far better versus like there's this scary bulldozer, right? It could kill somebody. It's like, well, you start to work with a shovel, you work with a small backhoe, and you start to move forward. I think that's the key thing with fear is get into it. It's here. It's growing. It's not going to disappear. You can't wish it away. So test it.
You know, Felix, a few moments ago, Tom was talking about the Treasury Department of the future. And that begs the question in my mind of what specific skills do you think Treasury leaders are going to need to thrive in this AI powered Treasury Department of the future? Is it going to be technical skills, analytical, strategic, something else?
Yeah, so discussing with our customer, we see that there is more and more technology skills that is emerging among customers. So especially new treasurer, they know a little bit more about technology. They use AI. They become AI native. You know, like we had mobile native, internet native people. So now we're going to have AI native people, and treasurer will become that in the future as well. So we should expect definitely people working together with AI. So if we come back to the fear question, I think we should consider that all the team we're discussing with, so they often complain about being understaffed and that they need more people, etc. So we can think in the future that AI will help the treasurer of the future to manage all that. And yeah, indeed, technology will definitely help, and some extra skills in technology is for sure required and needed.
Yeah. Craig, how about it? What skills do you think Treasury leaders are going to need to thrive in this new environment that we're entering?
Well, you always need critical thinking skills in any environment. And the skills is depending on what level. If you're the treasurer versus you're a director versus you're a treasury manager, you need more hands-on. If you're at the treasury manager level, kind of in the leadership role, director level, you should have more hands-on. You still need to be familiar with it if you're the treasurer. I'm going to say it again. You still need to be familiar with it. You didn't need to be a spreadsheet jockey last year to be the treasurer because you could have people do it, but you still need to know how the things operate to some extent. You have to have the context versus it being a surprise. So you need some skills there. You're going to need to hire people that are focused on AI and some of the automation techniques for sure. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
So a follow-up question for you then. How do you balance the need for data literacy, which we've talked about a lot during this call, with traditional treasury expertise?
Well, if we talk about a treasury tech stack, data, connectivity, systems, reporting, analytics, that's always been an issue because how can you make good decisions if you're not basing off of good information and having a sense of magnitude, scale, and direction? So data literacy it may not be the top item, but you're basing your information and your decisions on data that you have. You have to be able to evaluate that, whether it comes to you through AI and it's extrapolating, interpolating, or hallucinating, or you've got something put together by someone from your team who's an intern or who wasn't careful. All of those skills still matter, but you can't just trust, oh, it came from a machine, it must be accurate. It could be, off by an order of magnitude, and you still need to be able to catch those things.
Tom, I imagine some of the folks listening in today are wondering, all right, do I need to become an AI expert? So what is it? Do they need to be AI experts, or is it more about understanding where AI fits into their treasury processes?
Let Felix be the AI expert. Let your technology company be the AI expert, right? No, I don't think you have to be the expert, but you do have to be AI aware, and you have to be AI intelligent in terms of what, like we were saying, I don't know at what point of the conversation, but you have to ask the right questions about how the technology is working. It's like the migration of on-premise technology to SaaS technology. Ooh, scary, right? World back in the early 2000s, and now it's become the norm because we've learned how to ask the right questions and ensure that it's secure. So I would say it's that, and prompt engineering, all of those things like you were saying kind of earlier, Mark, in so many words, is going to become a norm. So it's that upskilling that we'll all have to get better at in our day-to-day jobs. But my one always thought-provoking, funny kind of like thought process here is think about it this way. If there's an 18-year-old coming out of college right now, or coming out of high school and entering the university level right now, and they come out of university in 5 years, let's say, and they're going to come work at your company, they're not going to know how to run a pivot table. They're just not. Like, it's just not going to be the normal world that we all came from of, data massaging and aggregating and all the Excel tricks that we're all very proud of. And I'll continue to hold that pride into my retirement. But they're not. And that's going to be an interesting world where they're going to, bring a completely different set of skill sets to our world.
One more question for you, Felix. I'm curious, are there some examples of treasury tasks where you believe that staff can begin safely experimenting with AI so that you could build up the staff confidence?
Yeah, definitely. So everything that relates to bank connectivity, status, reconciliation is something definitely you can let the AI handle for you. So verify compliance and things like that in order to get more confidence. I think for sure those type of tasks can be definitely outsourced to an agent. And obviously you has to verify that the agent give you some relevant figures, but those type can be of action can be definitely safely outsourced to an AI. I would say that everything that relates as of today of payment, transfer, investment needs to be yet carefully double checked and with a human in the loop. But for the rest, I think AI can already be very efficient in some cash management function like forecasting, cash forecasting, checking cash balance, checking conciliation. So yeah, those type of tasks are definitely a great way to
Craig, one
start.
Craig, one last question for you. What advice would you give to treasury leaders to create a culture in their department that embraces AI?
I think it would be having specific assignments to people to experiment with AI, to have a workshop. It could be a facilitated workshop, or you do it on your own, to list what are the activities you think could be automated or what needs to be done. And then having pilots assigned, that people are running pilot programs. There's nothing like actual practice to get it going.
Tom, one last question for you. How do you see the role of the human treasurer evolving as AI becomes more autonomous and agentic, as we've talked about just a few moments ago?
Hey, I kind of alluded to it, but again, if you think about the role, think about drafting the job description of the treasury functions roles in 2035, right? And we've done this thought exercise internally. It is different. And it's a matter of being, like, we've called it, like, liquidity and capital strategists, right? And their jobs and their roles from a top-down leadership perspective, like, the top is going to be the one that are going to create and orchestrate the way things are going to work, which is what they do today, but they do it across us as humans and the functions we serve. But we're going to do that applying to the AI agents. Us down at the other levels of treasurer and cash manager and capital markets manager, all of those things, we're going to be the overseers, right? We're going to be the directors of that. We're going to ensure that things are operating the way they need to within these new technologies. And that's going to be kind of what I see, my opinion, in 10 years, that's going to be the core part of the core function of treasury. The great news is, I keep saying this, right? Treasury was the very first financial thing that ever existed, right? It wasn't FP&A, it wasn't planning, it wasn't AR, it wasn't AP, it was treasury. It will always sustain. Right? It's always going to be the lifeblood of how companies work. It's just going to be operated differently.
Greg, we probably could have spent the entire workshop on these people issues, but that's all the time we have.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, Tom, and Felix. Great questions, great dialogue. There's another poll question that has popped up. That's our last poll question. Go ahead and answer that. And I want to thank you for spending time with us. I'll also let everybody answer the question. And Tom, I'd invite you to do some finishing comments before you turn it over to Brian, who does have a few important things to announce. But thank you CMLI and Kyriba, and for all of you who've attended. Tom.
Yeah, to close it out on our end, first of all, so much appreciation for CMLI, for you, Craig, and your organization, and hosting us here, and as well as the 281 people who are still on. Is so amazing and impressive for this 3-hour session. It was fun, like you said, for us on our side. Hopefully there was some entertainment there for them to listen to. I think as we sign off here on our end, again, AI is more than just a function. It's more than just a piece of technology that you can kind of turn on and use and trust. You have to kind of think about it, the building blocks to it. When we look at AI success, it's ensuring the excellence across these 4 major variables. the foundational models that you're working off of, the data that it's accessing and making sure it has access to it, to what Mark was saying earlier, the governance behind it, and how it's being orchestrated in the use cases it can perform. When bringing into this kind of two key, like, final parting thoughts here, Steve Jobs said this, and this is how I think we have to look at AI. It's not about looking at it solely for the use of productivity gains and how much time can we save, right? You cannot mandate productivity. It's our job as leaders for our teams and such to equip our team, give them the technology and let them become their best, right? Not just mandating do things quicker or faster. AI is going to be the enabler to fulfill and continue to fulfill, this vision here. And the last thing I would say is fear is I get it, right? We're there and we can push through that, right? Because AI won't replace people, but people who use AI will replace those who don't. And that's going to be, the foundation we work off of, we believe. And again, as we go through this over the next decade plus, that's going to be the way things operate. For our side as well, selfish plug, if there is any other kind of information that we can share in relation to some of the high level views that we saw earlier, please stay in touch. Reach out to me directly if you want. But also reach out to us through here, and we look forward to hopefully seeing some of you at AFP next week. And then Brian, I think I'm going to kick it over to you.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Felix. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Craig. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. The CTP and FP&A credits, today's slides, a recording of today's workshop, and the AI game plan that Craig mentioned earlier will be sent to you within 5 business days. And for more on AI, be sure to download the AI and Treasury and Finance Survey Report by clicking the link in the chat box. Thank you, and we hope you have a good rest of the day.